We are live.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the July 21st meeting of the East Hampton Town Board. Carol, would you please read the roll call?
Councilwoman Burke Gonzalez.
Present.
Councilman Lease.
Present.
Councilwoman Overby.
Here.
Councilman Bragman.
Here.
Supervisor Van Scoyac.
Present. Please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This morning, we'll have a public portion where any member of the public may call us to give comments to the board on any topic. The topics for today's work session agenda are the emergency communications upgrade update, and that's with Eddie Schnell and Chief Mike Sarlo. Stony Brook Southampton Hospital emergency room, that's Eric Shantz, the planning department. 81 Ocean Road Re-Vegetation, this is in the village. It's a CPF property. David Lease and Scott Wilson will discuss the revegetation plan on that property. We'll have an overview of the SCALP, which is the county aquaculture lease program, 10-year review with trustees Francis Bach and John Aldridge. And that's followed by the Affordable Housing Overlay District proposed for the East Hampton Housing Authority and George Green, and that is located at 286 and 293 Mile Harbor Road. And Councilman Bragman will lead that discussion, followed by liaison reports and resolutions. But before we get started, I'd like to give just a really brief update on where we stand regarding the COVID pandemic. Here in Suffolk County, we've had, as of 7/17, which is the last date recorded, which was last Friday, there were 58 new cases in the county of 1.48 million people. Of the tests given, which were 4,671, 1.2% of those tests were positive. Hospitalizations countywide were 61. The number of cases within Southampton Hospital were 2, and neither of those were in ICU. We've continued to sort of chug along at this low level of infection, which is great. We saw a very slight uptick that went up to about 80 cases in one testing day, but it's generally been in the 40 to 60 cases per day range for, again, a county that's nearly 1.5 million people. The disease is still here. We're still seeing some cases, although there are no new cases in East Hampton in the last couple of days. The total number of confirmed cases in 4.5 months here in East Hampton is 229. That is the lowest rate of infection within Suffolk County in the New York metro region for a township, second only to Shelter Island. And I note that Shelter Island has shelter in its name and it's surrounded by water. So, I think the public's done a great job, and we obviously have a lot of people here, full on summer. The weather's gotten very warm. We continue to ask that you please wear your masks in public. Wearing masks, washing your hands regularly, and disinfecting services will continue to keep us all safe and healthy, reduce the risk of transmission significantly, and we want everybody to have a safe and enjoyable summer as much as possible under these new regimes. So please be respectful and cooperate. Additionally, I'd like to mention that the travel restrictions to New York continue. The list of states is now 22. If you're traveling from any one of these 22 states, you are required to self-quarantine for 14 days or 14 days from the time you were last in one of these states. I'm just going to quickly read the list. Alabama, Arkansas, Arizona, California, Florida, Georgia, Iowa, Idaho, Kansas, Louisiana, Minnesota, Mississippi, North Carolina, New Mexico, Nevada, Ohio, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, Utah, and Wisconsin. This is basically half the country, and we're seeing states increase in high rates of infection in those states. Those states all have infection rates of 10% of the population or higher. We were the initial epicenter here in New York of this disease. We've made it over the curve, and again, we're at this rather low level. We want to keep it that way, and it's going to be important so that we don't end up going backwards and having to have further sacrifice. We've been through a lot, so let's all get on board with wearing the masks. At this point, I'd like to move on to any callers that may have called in. Mike, if you
there are currently no callers on the line. I'll let you know if we have any.
Great, thank you. In that case, we'll move on to the emergency communications upgrade update. We have our communications expert, Eddie Schnell, and we have our chief, Mike Sarlo, on the line to give us an update. Eddie, can you hear me?
Mr. Supervisor, at the time, I don't believe Eddie is in at the moment. He should be in momentarily, but Chief Sarlo is there.
Okay.
While we wait for Eddie to join us, I want to say that, COVID has caused a couple of additional delays in the progress. However, Eddie has worked diligently and tirelessly to keep this thing moving towards the goal line. And his update is very comprehensive. He's on top of where we are with each site. And he's had some challenges along the way with some of the repairs and issues that have happened. And he's been extremely responsive to the fire department's needs and requests. And it's been challenging. And I really appreciate everything Eddie's doing. And I've gotten a lot of positive feedback from the fire districts on his work and communication with them in programming equipment and ensuring that they're in the loop and updated on the progress. And we're getting there. We're slowly but surely getting there. And, thankfully, our issues have been minor to the point where we haven't had any major interruptions or any major drops in communication and the safety of our officers, as well as all of the volunteers and paramedics that are on the site are still working properly. So I don't want to. Eddie's got a very detailed and coordinated presentation for you. I don't want to jump in on that. Is he on yet? Is Eddie on?
Yes,
Yeah,
Eddie is
here.
there.
So with no further ado, again, I'm here to answer some more questions. Eddie has briefed the town board every 3 or 4 weeks. He's in my office at my door almost every morning with an update, doing a lot of troubleshooting. And like I said, the COVID has created some challenges with the number of staff for some of these subcontractors and the timing of getting some of the work done. But he's still plugging ahead, and we're in pretty good shape, all things considered. So with no further ado, I'll just turn it over to Eddie.
Morning, Eddie.
Morning. So we've been pushing ahead even through the whole COVID scene. For some subcontractors, it was a problem for them to come out. But for others, they were kicked out of other places, so we took them. When they're working by themselves in the middle of the woods, not too much of a risk there. So I'll go through the list of the sites that we're working on. The Panago site at Town Hall, it's on the air. There's some minor punch list items still to be closed out, but it's ready to roll. Amagansett, everything is done inside the building and in the tower. We're waiting on one last part to come in, and then that site will be on the air. We're expecting that within the next week. The Montauk Tower, we outfitted the old tower to work on the new radio system, as the new tower won't be done anytime soon, really, to meet our schedule. So we put the new antennas in the old tower. And all the inside work is done. We're just waiting on the microwave radios to get here and be assembled. Most of the order is on site. There's a few odds and ends that they're saying we'll have by the end of July, and then we'll be able to put that site into service. The replacement tower in Montauk, the bid is out now. There's a bid walk tomorrow, and we're opening the sealed bids on August 13th. And once we have a contractor hired, we'll be able to get a good date on the new tower. But because we set up the old tower, we'll be able to operate on the new system. And then when the new tower is ready, we just move everything over without much interruption to the users. The Wainscott site is on the air, ready to go. The Noyak site, we've made a lot of progress. They're actually installing the antennas and lines. They started last week and they're going to be done by this Thursday. And then the only major holdup at that site to this point is getting electric delivered. We've received all the approvals that we need from PSCG finally. They are saying that the meter is going to be installed imminently and that the transformer delivery and pole replacement should be happening soon. They haven't given us a hard date yet. But even with PSCG, even a hard date isn't a hard date, because if it's stormy that day, they're not coming. But we're hoping for that to all be wrapped up within the next month, and then we'll be able to tie up all the loose ends, and then that site will be ready to go. At police headquarters, the console positions are most of the way installed. There's a few accessories and other items that, until we are ready to really start using them, it wasn't worth putting it out and cluttering the desks with, especially in the summer. The village is basically in the same stance. All the equipment is there. It just needs to be unboxed and plugged in. All the heavy lifting is complete. The Gator site in Montauk, it has all of its FAA and FCC approvals. They've ordered the shelter and the monopoles. We've already received the radio equipment a few weeks ago for that site, and that's progressing nicely. Overall, we're on track to start moving users from the old system to the new system in the fall. The biggest question mark on that is PSCG, but as of last week, talking with them, I don't think that'll be an issue at this point. Once the Noyak site is on and the Montauk site are on, we can start full site optimizations, which is really just fine tuning. And from there, we're ready to start beating on the system, make sure there's no unexpected problems, and turning it loose to the users.
That's great, Eddie. So you're looking at doing your drive tests and test cutovers like August, September, with the major cutover in October. That's pretty much the schedule at this point?
Yeah, we want to, once the site optimizations are complete, we can start doing some testing in the field, and we'll probably move one of the smaller town agencies over that has a wide coverage area. So then let them actually put a live user on the system and see what they come back with in terms of any problems or gaps. And that way they can be addressed before it's public safety, police and fire that are brought onto the system.
Right. You obviously want to run it through its paces to make sure there are any glitches before you do a full cutover. So all during that time, the existing system will still be operational until you do the full cutover. And then does the old system still remain to some degree as a backup?
We'll probably leave it in as long as it lives, but once we kind of have everybody moved over,
right,
it's probably not going to last too long.
I know that it's become obsolete, and that many of the parts for that system, you've had to scavenge, even going on eBay to find old equipment to cannibalize. So we appreciate that you've been able to keep this system going as long as you have. This was really an update that should have happened a couple of administrations ago, but due to the financial crisis at the time, I think they decided not to undertake it. It is a rather costly undertaking, but a necessary one. So thankful to see that we've stayed mostly on schedule. There's been just a little bit of slippage due to the pandemic, but not really too much. And we appreciate all your hard work. Are there any questions for Eddie or the chief at this point?
I have a question. So obviously when this system was originally designed and we bonded back in 2017, Springs wasn't included in the original plan because we didn't have a tower there, and we've been working on getting a tower for emergency communications. But I know residents in Springs would want to know, once we cut over to the new system, how will this system operate in Springs?
So once we cut over the original 5 sites, it's going to operate exactly the same as the old one did in terms of coverage. We're not adding, we're not subtracting. We did bond additional money past 2017. The first one was for the Gator site, and we've purchased that at this point. And we also, the last bonding round, we also included 2 additional sites, one for Springs and one for Northwest. We're actually working on the change order pricing now to add a Spring site and the Northwest site at the brush dump. A lot of the pricing is generic because it doesn't matter where in Springs we go, we still need the same stuff. So they can nail a price down and we can start negotiating. But until we actually have a identified Spring site that's viable, I wouldn't want to be signing a check for it.
So, Eddie, also the Gator site in Montauk was not in the original plan either, was it?
No, it was not. That was something
that we were able to add and finally get some movement on what I think had been a decades-long process of trying to get the ability to locate our communications on that site.
2 decades.
2 decades, yeah.
20 years, absolutely.
20 years. So that was a major accomplishment, I think, that we were able to get that site. That will backfill portions of Montauk that had no coverage. Can you just expound on that a little bit as well?
Yeah, with the terrain of Montauk, you've really got 2 north to south ridge lines, or actually really 3. You've got one at the dump capped landfill. You've got one that runs that has the Montauk Water Tower on it, and then the third one is where the Gator site is off East Lake Drive. And right now we only have a tower at the dump, so everything east of the water tower is shaded by the hill and makes it rough. And then you go past the Gator site up to the lighthouse and it's really bad. But even in the docks, there's bad service there because you're shaded by the hill at Culloden Point. And the Gator site fixes 99% of that.
That's terrific.
Yep.
Any other questions?
Well, I actually, because I know I'm going to get quizzed on this. When you say it'll operate just like the old system, they're all getting all new radios and things like that. I mean, there should be some improvement, no, in Springs with new equipment everywhere else throughout the town. So
we're obviously replacing the equipment. We'll be back to like it was when it was brand new, which was marginally better, I'm sure. We're also switching from analog to digital, which does have some coverage advances just over the years and technology upgrades, but it's not substantial enough to not need a site in Springs.
It's also multiple channels and calls can occur now. Many more calls can occur at the same time without stepping on each other, right?
Yeah,
that's one of the biggest
system capacity by triple.
Yes.
Right.
Can I ask, once you get a site in Springs, how long, what's the window that it would take to get it up and running so that they have the coverage that they need?
As soon as there's a tower that we can build on, I mean, it takes about 3 months to get the building manufactured, and it takes about a month to get the radio equipment. There's some unknowns in labor availability and time of year and whatnot, but 6 to 9 months. I'd put a conservative thing on if everything goes perfectly. And that's assuming a tower's already standing.
Any other questions for Ed or the Chief? Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen. We're pleased about the progress and we look forward to completing this the system.
Thank you.
Be safe out there. Chief, just before you go, I want to thank you for all of your efforts and that of the department. You know, we're full on summer right now, and I know the number of calls coming in, particularly on weekends, is very significant. I think we had over 400 calls on the 4th of July weekend, and this past weekend, if I recall correctly from your report, it was something like 386 calls for service over the weekend period. Super high call volume. Many of those were residential noise complaints. I think you had, obviously some traffic accidents and whatnot, but the report also stated that you're seeing good compliance with regard to establishments and how they're operating. We're happy to hear that and see that happening. Business owners are taking this very seriously, even some that may not have been taking it as seriously earlier on. So, we again thank you for all your efforts and keeping us all safe. And good luck out there.
Thank you. And just to jump in on that, Peter, any chance I get, I try to make sure we're spreading the word to the public. Respecting other people's space, wearing a mask when you can't keep distancing, limiting your gatherings, respecting these business owners who are working very hard to try to provide a safe environment for their customers and make some financial gain during their summer season. We really all have to work together collectively. As busy as we are and as much as we try to focus on some of these quality of life issues, our emergency response and just the sheer volume of the calls we have to handle on summer weekends makes it a huge, huge challenge to spend any more time than we possibly already are addressing some of those issues surrounding COVID. So we really promote cooperation and everybody working together on this. I just wanted to note, we've been visiting all of the restaurants and some of the busier food service places on a very regular basis. And again, trying to really get there on weekend nights when they face their biggest challenges with crowds. And this weekend was even better than the weekend before. A lot of compliance. And just particular note, we did have over 380 calls this weekend and only 8 COVID compliance complaints. And 2 of those were self-initiated by officers who saw something with a line or a grouping and took it upon themselves to pull a number and handle it themselves. So the public only called in 6 times from Friday at 6 a.m. to Monday at 6 a.m. Over that whole weekend, as busy as we were. Only 6 phone calls made to our desk to complain about any COVID compliance. So I think we've made a lot of progress in getting the word out. I think people are trying to do the right thing. And, the positive test rate numbers seem to bear that out. And, we just need to all keep working together, and we appreciate everyone's support. So that's my message, any chance I get to put out there.
Thanks, Chief. We're going to reiterate that message as well, that we need to be vigilant, even though the numbers are low. We really need to keep them that way. We can't afford to go backwards at this point. We've all been through a lot to get us here. So again, thanks for all that you do and that of the department.
Thank you very much. Have a good week.
Okay, stay safe and be well.
Thanks.
At this point, we do have some callers, I believe, that are waiting on the line. So Michael, if you could cue in the caller.
Yes, one moment. I'm unmuting the first caller right now.
Good morning.
Good morning.
This is David.
Who's
Good.
calling?
How are you?
Oh, hey, David. How are you?
Excellent. While the chief and Ed, Mr. Schnell are on the line still, I have a question. The new tower in Montauk, I believe, had to be lowered for FAA reasons. So when the existing antenna is moved to the new tower when it's built, what will the difference be in the height, and will that be any problem?
So the existing tower is 150 feet and the new tower is 185. So we still have an actual increase in the whip antenna's heights overall. So if anything, we have a marginal increase. The increase is more to do with the backhaul point-to-point links.
As I understood it, Eddie, we increased the size of the Panago Tower to compensate for the reduced height of Montauk.
Yeah, the Panago Tower is going up an additional 20 feet. That hasn't happened just yet. We're putting all the paperwork together to go out to bid.
And I have one other question about the emergency communication system that I've never understood. When you referred to the Wainscott site, I know there obviously is a tower at the police headquarters, which I believe had to be elevated. Isn't there a second Wainscott facility on a Verizon tower near the power lines? Is that one up and running with the new equipment?
Yeah, that one's up and running. It's on the north side of the airport on the power lines. The town actually owns that tower.
Okay, so was work done there? Because I know they had put in an application to put a new tower to replace an old tower. Has that work been done?
They're just starting that now, but we're ready. We installed on the old tower, and then Verizon is paying the town to relocate to the new tower.
Okay, very good. I have a question that's unrelated to emergency communications, if I can go ahead with that.
Please do.
Peter, could you give us an update on the status of town offices at the Pantago location? I would like to know whether or not public has access to planning board ZBA files and the assessor's public access computer at this point in time, and if not at this point in time, when do you expect that will be available, those things? I know the building department has reopened, I was told, although I haven't seen it, to some extent to walk-in traffic. So could you just update us on the town offices over there and the clerk's office as far as walk-in compliant activity?
Sure. All the town offices are open and for the most part have remained open. We have 100% staffing at this point. There was a restriction by the governor as far as protocols for COVID that you had to reduce your staff, your non-essential staff, by 50%. That's been lifted. So we're fully staffed. At this point, town hall is not open directly to the public. We have a greeter tent set up outside of town hall to direct people as to how they can apply for and receive applications. There's a drop box both at town hall and in Pantago for those buildings. You can contact the individual office to set up an appointment if there's something that you can't do remotely. Again, we're just trying to avoid the potential for the spread of the disease by limiting the amount of the public that might gather or go to an office. As you can imagine, 300 Pantago, that office complex has a rather narrow hallway, and we wouldn't want to have people queued up in that hallway. So at this point, we're asking again if you can't do that work remotely. And I believe like the assessors have made the roles and whatnot available online. If there's specific information that you need, you can contact them directly. But that's where we are right now. It's pretty much the same with most of the other municipalities on Long Island at this point. We look forward to being able to get to a point where we can be comfortable inviting the public in just a walk-up basis. But, at this point, we're still being cautious.
Okay, just one clarification. I think you said that it's your understanding that someone could make an appointment to go to, say, the assessor's office to use the public access computer. Is that?
Yes, so each of the departments has submitted, we've gone through safety protocols and meeting the public. I think the assessor's office, there's only one keyboard terminal that could be used while properly distancing, and a maximum of 2 members of the public could be in that office space and physically maintain the proper distancing. So at this point, we're just asking, though, that if you have a specific need, again, that can't be met online or via email, that you call to try and make arrangements to facilitate that business.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you, David. Be well.
Thank you.
Michael, do you have any other callers on the line?
Yes, we do. We have one more caller who I will be unmuting right now. Hello, caller. You're live with the town board.
Hi, this is Carol Valentine.
I'm sorry, can you...
This is for Ms. Boyd.
Hello, can you please state your name again?
This is Carol Valentine from Mr. Van Scoyer.
Carol, how are you? Yes.
Hi. I'm just calling today to follow up based on a call I made a few months ago with regards to the beetle bug trees that the Sawyers cut down on my property and on the adjoining town property. I'm just calling in regards to a follow-up that I was told I would get shortly after the day that one of your board members and Mr. Wilson inspected all of the property, and I'm just inquiring because I've yet to hear anything back.
Okay, I do remember that you had called and we spoke on the meeting, and I believe there was a meeting set up with you and land management. Is that correct? And that they came and did a site inspection?
Yes, Mr. Live as well.
Scott Wilson actually joined you at your property and also traversed the path. The board has been alerted to that discussion. There hasn't been an in-depth discussion on it yet, and if there's an update will come to you shortly. But the board is aware of our discussion on that day.
Okay, I guess the discussion on that day was that there would be a solution and immediate feedback, and that's been a while, and this has been ongoing for a couple of years now, period. So I'm just wanted to inquire about when I can have a resolution and have these trees removed, and
that mischaracterizes the discussion. Mischaracterizes how it was left. It was going to go to the board for discussion. Never stated there was going to be a resolution.
So we'll go over it. I believe we'll have a memo for you outlining the town's position.
Okay. Any idea when I might receive that memo, sir?
I would think today's Tuesday, by the end of the week today, this week, by the end of this week, end of business Friday.
Okay.
If not sooner.
Okay. Well,
if not sooner.
I'll look forward to hearing back. I appreciate the time and I appreciate the energy and the consideration.
Well, thanks for calling, Carol. Be well.
Thank you. Have a wonderful week. Bye.
You too. Thanks. Michael, do we have any other callers on the line?
There are currently no more callers on the line.
Okay. I think that's our cue to move on with the next work session agenda item, which is the Stony Brook Southampton Hospital. And we have Eric Shantz from the planning department, senior planner, who will lead us through this. As many of you know, the Southampton Hospital signed a lease with the town over the Panago ball fields for a future site of an emergency care center within the township. Southampton Hospital will be moving further west to the college property, Southampton College. As you know, in any given summer, the travel times between Montauk and other portions of East Hampton to Southampton Hospital can be quite long, and that's cause for concern, as well as just the additional need for medical services within our community as our numbers have continued to grow. So we'll have a discussion about that. They're under a timeline for the state grants. So those timelines are closing in quickly. We've had a little bit of a delay due to COVID, but would like to move forward. Part of what we'll be doing is a secret declaration on this project and declaration of lead agency. So Eric, you want to take it away and give us
Sure. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you fine, thanks.
Okay, so this needs the site plan approval as well as a zone change. The town board has already discussed the zone change and tentatively agreed to grant it to CI zoning. I'd like to point out right off the bat, too, that I just emailed the attorney for the applicant. I'm echoing horribly, aren't I? Are you sure? Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead, Eric.
Is that better?
Yes.
Marginally.
Okay. All right, yeah, sorry. I think it's the mask that's not helping out too much. But Liz Vale is here. She's the attorney for the applicants. Mercifully, I don't need to say much on this. We're here really to commence the deeper process. which should be the town board declaring lead agency. This, again, as I said, requires a zone change, and the town board has to grant that for the project to move forward. So therefore, we don't want to segment under SECRA that zone change process from the project review, whether that be site plan, and also future review of the project in front of the town board. So really, this is just to commence SECRA. There will be a full review of the project, both at a public hearing and possibly a work session before that public hearing for the town board, as well as for the planning board. And I do have this tentatively scheduled for August 5th in front of the planning board. That's a Wednesday. The meeting begins at 6:30. I would encourage anyone from the public interested in this to watch that, as well as certainly the town board. But basically right now, this was put on the agenda not for a full presentation of the project, but just to commence SECRA and have you declare lead agency status.
Thank you, Eric. Any discussion on board members about declaration of lead agency?
No, I'm comfortable with that. I just put a timeline together because we've been working, on this project for a couple of years now. So to just understand how the process is going to work. So obviously Sylvia's sponsoring a resolution today that declares the town board lead agency. Eric mentioned it goes to the planning board, and on August 5th, it's going to the ARB. On August 13th, the involved agencies will all receive letters. They'll have 30 days to respond. That date, that 30 days is up on Thursday, August 20th. So then Eric and I discussed that he could come to a work session then on Tuesday, September 1st, and we could discuss EAF parts 1 and 2. And then at the Thursday board meeting on September 3rd, the town could make a secret determination and set a public hearing for the rezoning. Then we would look to have the public hearing on Thursday, September 17th. And then depending if we're still teleconferencing or if we're, back in town hall again, if we're back in town hall again, we could vote on this on October 1st. If we're still teleconferencing, then we've got to get the transcripts back. We've got to post them for 2 weeks. So I think ideally we would shoot for Thursday, October 15th to vote on the rezoning. And Eric and I, and spoke to John too, think that that's a realistic timetable to hit.
Okay, very good. Any other comments or discussion?
Yeah, I have some concerns about this process, which I've expressed before. Whenever we have a zone change and a project proposed together, the law essentially requires us to conduct the SECRA, the environmental review, for the entire project all at once. It doesn't distinguish between the rezoning and the plan itself. That can be done when there isn't a plan in existence, but that's not the case here. There is a plan in existence. And so I'm a little concerned about when we do divide off the rezoning as an issue, which the law calls segmentation. We have to show that we're going to do a review that is as comprehensive as would be done in a review of the whole project at once. So, I have some reservations about splitting it off, since we've seen the plan for this building, and it's largely fleshed out. And my second concern is that really, although we own the land, that isn't the strongest policy to make the town board the lead agency. In fact, it's a rather weak basis to make us the lead agency, because we've delegated site plan review exclusively to the planning board. And I think it's the planning board that should be the lead agency in this case. They have the broadest jurisdiction. They're set up to do this kind of planning review. We are not. I've been involved in many, many reviews that purport to be planning reviews in front of town boards, and they don't go as well as they do in front of the planning board. So I think there are a couple of, and the other thing is I guess that if I understood Kathy correctly, you're hoping to have an issuance of a secret determination by October. Is that correct? Or was it an approval?
Kathy, you're muted. Sorry.
Say a secret determination by September 3rd.
And an approval of the project by October?
Vote on the rezoning either beginning of October or mid-October.
That's for rezoning, Jeff. It's
for
not
rezoning.
The planning board obviously is going to take its time on review of the project.
On the building itself.
Yeah,
okay.
On the actual project.
Yeah.
I just had a question. You mentioned that planning board has the broadest jurisdiction. I wonder if you could just explain that to me.
Yeah. Well, because essentially, if you look at the site plan review statute, that establishes the powers of the zoning board. So they have,
Yeah, I'm talking about you said planning though, not zoning.
I'm sorry.
I'm curious.
Planning board is what I'm talking about. Planning board jurisdiction. I don't know if I misspoke before.
So are you saying that the planning board has greater jurisdiction?
Yes,
than the town?
yes, they do. Yeah, it may sound contradictory because they have site plan powers that we have exclusively delegated to the
right,
planning.
and they will still be able to exercise all of those in their review.
Yeah, I see what you're trying to do here is separate out the zone change from the actual review of the project.
Well, as you said, Jeff, I think, and I see that counsel for the applicant would like to chime in here, but I think the zone change is actually the purview of the town board and must be done by the town board. It's not the purview of the planning board, and that's why we're proceeding in this way. But I'll let Ms. Vale. I saw her raising her hand to speak. So, good morning.
Can everyone hear me? Good morning, Liz Vale, Farrell Fritz, 50 Station Road, Watermill. Good morning, board members. Thank you for allowing me to address some of Councilman Bragman's concerns regarding this SECR review. So the proposed action, as Eric outlined for you, initially is the zone change from Parks and Conservation to Commercial Industrial to allow for the proposed emergency department use as a semi-public facility use for a medical arts building in the Commercial Industrial Zoning District. And that's, you have to follow the procedure set forth in Town Code Section 255-930, which is, of course, designated to you by New York State Town Law, Section 264 for zone changes. We have submitted a full site plan application to ensure that this application can be reviewed for secret purposes in its entirety by the town board with referrals to the planning board, of course. And the reason the town board is actually the appropriate lead agency is if you look at the criteria set forth in the Department of Environmental Conservation's regulations for determining lead agency, when there is a lead agency dispute, it's typically 3 factors that the DEC commissioner has to consider when determining lead agency. The first one is whether the anticipated impacts of the action being considered are primarily statewide, regional, or of local significance. The second one is which agency has the broadest governmental powers for investigation of the impacts of the proposed action. And the third one is which agency has the greatest capacity for providing the most thorough environmental assessment of the proposed action. Actually, it's funny that Councilman Bragman is raising this issue that the planning board is the more appropriate lead agency, because I made this very same argument when I represented the planning board of the town of Southampton in a lead agency dispute against the zoning board of appeals for a zone change, for a use change application. And the DEC commissioner actually ruled that the Zoning Board of Appeals was the appropriate lead agency in that determination. And he ruled that because he said, as a practical matter, and I have the decision which I can forward to you, Mr. Bragman, he said, while the planning board site plan review authority is also substantial, as a practical matter, it might not even be called upon should the ZBA deny the variance. Likewise, this application will not even proceed should the town board decide to not grant the zone change. So in that capacity, from my experience on lead agency issues, the town board definitely has the greater jurisdiction with authority for doing an entirely complete secret review. You also have the same staff at your disposal as the planning board does. The planning board has more experience perhaps, but you have the same experienced staff to support you in determining your secret determination as well as the planning board. So for those, when you consider those factors, I think that actually town board is the more appropriate lead agency dispute. And we're not asking, we're just not asking for you to segment or separate out the zone change from the site plan. We're asking you to do the entire secret review for the project.
If I can just make a comment, we're going to get into the law just a little bit. There is a difference in what Liz just told us, and that is that the plan, if you need a variance, you can't move forward in front of the planning board because they don't have the power to review something that requires a variance. But I also have some experience in litigating this identical issue, actually, Liz, in the village of Southampton, when the Parish Art Museum came up and they wanted to rip down the facade of it, and the village board owned the land and leased it to the Parish Art Museum, and the village board wanted to go forward with the project. And we went to the planning board, and the planning board stated its interest in becoming the lead agency. So that got flipped up to the commissioner. So that's a comparable, that pits the landlord owner, in that case a village, against a planning board in exactly the same way that this case hits the town board as the landlord.
I think there's one.
Let me just finish this, please, Peter. I won't be unduly long on it. And it went up to the commissioner, and the commissioner indeed said that the appropriate board is the planning board because they have the exclusive delegation to undertake site plan review, and that is a broader power than the interest of the municipality, which merely owns the property. So I'm just going to leave it at that. I know that we're not going to resolve this.
I would just like to add one point, which I think is important, and that is that you represent the town board, and the town board is making this declaration. If the planning board were to also challenge and ask for lead agency status, they would be free to do so, I believe, but that's not what's happening here. I think let's make that clear. It's the town board declaring lead agency. I don't think this is controversial where the planning board will be asking for a lead agency instead.
And I think you're declaring lead agency because you're going to rezone this property. Potentially, that's what the action is going to be before you, not because you're the landowner, if I may.
Well, let me just say something about rezoning. It's very well settled law under SECRA, the New York State Environmental Quality Review Act, that actions typically consist of a set of steps or actions that will effectuate the plan. And it notes in 617.3 G that all of those steps together constitute the action. And so the basic issue here is there a reason to separate out the zone change from the substantive review of the plan when you have the plan already in existence? My position would be no, and that the whole thing should go to the planning board, which is better set for it, and that we're not supposed to segment that unless we can prove that we're going to do an equally insightful and rigorous review. So I'm just a little. I would think it would go smoother and faster if the entire thing went to the planning board with a statement from the town board that's subject to their review. We're inclined to grant the zoning change.
We appreciate your opinion, Jeff. Are there any other comments or questions? No? Okay. Thank you for joining us today, Liz. Be well, and Eric as well. At this point, we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is the 81 Ocean Road revegetation with the village. And we'll just take a short pause because I think we have to switch over audio for that.
And Peter, can you just let Scott into the meeting also, please?
Yes. Michael, could you let Scott Wilson into our meeting, please?
Yes, actually, there's a person trying to come in. It's simply noted as an iPhone. It doesn't say Scott's name, but we're assuming that's him.
Probably Scott. We can find out once you let them in.
All right. I have
Hopefully
done so.
It's Scott.
We hope so too.
He often pops up as iPhone.
There he is.
I'm good, Peter.
Okay, Carol, thank you for that. So we have a discussion of the 81 Ocean Road, and the board is all aware, but this is a property that is on the east side of Ocean Road, just at Hook Pond as you come down to Main Beach, which the village had requested be purchased through our CPF program. There aren't usually too many requests from the village about purchasing properties. I think the last major one we purchased was the Gardner Mill Cottage property. At this point, I'll let the structure was removed from that property, and there's a revegetation plan that's being proposed, and that would, I believe, incur CPF funds. So Scott and David, if you want to take it away.
Yes, thank you, Peter. You're correct. This property is actually 81 Ocean Ave. I'm just going to do a quick screen share on here to show the property, how it's sited right now. It has been, the structure has been removed. To the left of the photo, you'll see Ocean Avenue. The bottom left of the photo, you'll see the north end of the Main Beach parking lot. And to the bottom right, you'll see the shoreline of Hook Pond. You can see the delineating fencing that's going on this property where the structures were removed. Primarily in discussion with the village administrator, some village trustees, and also with Billy Hajak, who's also with us right now. We want to try to make this a wetland buffer project. The purchase on here was for open space and passive recreation. And to restore it with the appropriate wetland buffer on there, I think would be a great educational project that thousands of people will see a day as they travel up and down Ocean Avenue to see that we can do a buffering project that it looks beautiful, very effective. Maybe they might want to do on summer there, seaward lands of their properties that abut also the rest of Hook Pond, maybe even also George Pond, other areas in the village and in the town then too. With that, Billy and Scott, if you have anything you want to add also, we can keep moving.
Yeah, I do, actually, if you don't mind, I would like to make a couple of comments here. So would you mind putting that picture up again, David?
Yes, I will.
So while that picture loads up, you know, when the town works with an outside agency or the seller, in this case, to do a demolition project, we do require that after all the structures are removed, that ultimately the person doing the demolition work and regrading work would actually fill that space to grade, top dress, and actually plant native grass seeds there. And unfortunately, not every time of year is the ideal time for propagation of new vegetation. In this case, is native grasses. So that you can see on that aerial, all of that sort of white coloration is actually bare ground. I also want to note that when David pointed out in the bottom right corner there, as the property butts up to Hook Pond, that sort of distance is 10 feet or less of buffer area, and a lot of that vegetation that you see right there is actually Phragmite. So while we do have an intermunicipal agreement for this property with the village, who will go on to manage this property, within that agreement we did contemplate a restoration project. And so David and I actually walked that property with Becky and Billy at the village, who worked on the parameters for this restoration project. And I think the objective that was shared with the board, dated June 18, 2020, was actually pretty clear, if you want, I'm happy to read it, or if David, you want to just put it up so the public can actually take a look at it while we're talking about this. So after we got that, and that was actually drafted by Billy Hayjack, I reviewed the Opinions Bureau with regard to restoration projects. I've reviewed the law, and I've also reviewed sort of past practice on what we do in these types of situations. And I will have to say that for acquired properties upon which we intend some human intervention, it has been our past practice to first adopt a management plan prior to doing the actual physical work. Since the work proposed with this property is wetland restoration and abatement of stormwater runoff, which would still be occurring during the process of drafting that plan, and because the proposed use is so passive and educational, in this instance, we feel it's prudent to actually start to pursue this RFP, this restoration plan, and in the interim, or concurrently, in fact, we can draft and work towards the adoption of a management plan. So we could do these two projects concurrently, but as mentioned previously, there's few good times of year to actually start, a planting project and make sure that all of the plants that you actually plant there, including the grasses, actually survive. And so, time is sort of the essence. September, October is a great time for planting here. And so if we don't run these projects concurrently, I don't know that we may have to postpone another year. And if the goal is actually, getting species in here to do some filtration from stormwater runoff and create a buffer area, the sooner the better.
One of the aspects of the plan that I think is very important as we move forward with wetland restorations, buffers, or any of our even other water quality projects that are separate from this, is that this plan and the RFP is going to be requesting a 5-year maintenance and management program for the site, including Phragmites management, which will allow for the view shed and also not for Phragmites to encroach upon any more of the shoreline and any of the restoration we're looking to do. But a 5-year maintenance and management plan will then allow for the village then to continue on that maintenance and we'll see what vegetation is going to thrive, what needs to be replaced, what maybe gets eaten by deer browse or such as we move forward. I know Billy from the village is on the line. I don't know, Billy, if you have any questions or any other comments.
No, unless there are any specific questions for me. The village is very happy with the acquisition, and they would really like to move forward and have the property restored.
Any questions for?
I do. So is this something that's going to be funded with CPF money, this restoration?
Yes.
Okay. Was it in your 2020 plan? I mean, did you budget for this, or we didn't foresee that this was going to happen
we have money
really
in the budget for this, but no, you're right. We didn't foresee this particular project when we actually created our management and stewardship plan. So yes, we can modify that plan. It's a small modification, but the money is available.
Okay. And now, so some of the trees that are coming out, are any of them, specimen trees that we would want, that landscapers may want to purchase from the town?
Now, when the actual building was taken down, some of the trees were actually auctioned off or taken out by some others. So most anything that's there is little to zero value to landscapers. That they've either grown into each other, where there would be bare holes. I don't think there's any way to recoup any money for anything that's left on the property now.
And will there be, so if I'm driving, down to Main Beach, once this project is done, will I see the water from there? I mean, are we going to take down the trees that are lining the street now? Is that part of the plan?
Yeah, ostensibly I'm sorry, go ahead, David.
That's part of the plan, is to take down any of the trees that are not going to be indigenous to the area, open up the view shed, collect stormwater runoff, do it in a way that we can also put up I would like to put up a temporary sign. I know I've spoken to the village about this, just stating what we're doing there, so passerbys can actually potentially read it, see if that's something the plan they would like to do. But yes, the view shed would be opened up to the pond And I think it just adds one more beautiful little scenic vista to the village.
Yeah, and this is a thoughtful plan. You know, I've read through it, and I obviously a lot of work went into it, and I appreciate that.
Now, I do have to say, I'll give the credit to Billy and Scott for working on this. Of course, Billy put this really together along with the village, and it's been wonderful to work on a project with him again.
Any other questions or discussion? Well, we look forward to seeing the plan move forward. And again, I understand the timeliness of doing so, given that the planting season is rapidly approaching. And so to work concurrently with developing management plan, I think is the right approach in this circumstance. So if the board members agree, we'll move forward.
Mm-hmm. I'm supportive.
Thank you, everyone.
Board members support. Thank you, David. Thank you, Scott. And thank you, Billy.
Thank you very much.
So next up, we have a discussion about the Suffolk County Aquaculture Lease Program. About 10 years ago, the county received bottomland from the state and the authority to set up a lease program for aquaculture throughout the Peconic region and Gardiner's Bay. I think ostensibly even as far as Montauk, however, the initial lease program only extended as far as about Napeague, Cranberry Hole Road area. We have John Barley Dunn, who's the head of our aquaculture department, with us, as well as Francis Bach, town trustee clerk. The trustees have held a number of meetings about the aquaculture lease program, which is up for a 10-year renewal. And some of, I think, what's become controversial about the program is that the development of floating gear for raising aquaculture kind of occurred after the initial lease program, and it didn't really encompass or consider that initially, and that floating gear has been put in place, which has caused some conflicts between stakeholders and user groups of our waters. So there's been a bunch of discussion from various stakeholders, and I thank the trustees for involving the public in those discussions to try to figure out recommendations to the county as they work to finalize the aquaculture lease program potential changes. So without any further ado, I will kick it off to Francis Bach. Welcome, Francis.
Thanks, Peter, and thank you for inviting us. So I was contacted by the county that they were going to be reviewing this program, and because we are lucky enough to have John Aldred on the board, he was obviously the person to assign to this task. He spent a lot of time going back and forth between meetings with the county, setting up private meetings with members of the public, and probably several hundred hours of work went into reviewing this. And I think John is on the line here, if he'd like to step in and describe what they've actually been doing on this program. John?
Yeah, I'm on. Yes.
Morning, John.
Morning. Farley and I actually kind of worked together on this over the last year and a half or so. And started out with a sort of a public meeting. We requested that the county set up a meeting in each town to invite members of the public to hear what the program is about, try to understand the 10-year review procedure, and weigh in with their opinions. And I'm sure you all know the controversy it's caused in the Devon area. All the 22 leases are currently cited, and the displeasure that many of the residents and recreational community, Bay recreational community has with
citing so many leases in that area. So as Spencer said, we've met with Devon people, Laser Point people.
John, could you just try speaking up a little bit? I don't know if the rest of you can hear John, but I'm having a little trouble hearing what he's saying.
Okay, I'll try. We met with Devon people, Laser Point, and recreational community many times. And we also had meetings with the opponents, if you will, and aquaculturists that are practicing in that area or have practiced in that area. And, you know, to make a long story short, positions are relatively set on both sides. So I think I'll let maybe Barley or Francis continue in this vein. Barley?
Barley, you're on mute.
Yeah, I'm not sure what I can add. Yeah, it's been a long process, and I know that the town board has been in on some of the communication. Whether or not you have much time to allocate to it is understandable, but for lack of a better word, the opponents have put in their time, and they've also been willing to compromise, which has been refreshing. But it's like John said, they're pretty much set. They've been doing their homework. They've been doing a lot of background work, and you know, and all that work is kind of reflected in the letter that the trustees sent to the Scout board, which I guess I thought we were going to review today. So, you know, and during the previous public comment period back in December, I sent the letter kind of representing the town board and CC'd all of you. And hopefully you had a chance to look at it. I wouldn't expect anybody to remember it now, 7 months later, but.
Well, Barley, can I just ask a favor? Can we just, you know, for the viewing audience and others, just a little bit more background about the Suffolk County Aquaculture Lease Program, the amount of sites that 10 years ago this went in. This is a 10-year review. How many sites are there? How many sites are there in East Hampton? The Fisheries Advisory Committee had part of that review 10 years ago. They reviewed it recently also. Where those sites are that people are interested in, and maybe why they were chosen 10 years ago, and maybe what the interactions from individuals that want changes to those sites. What are the topics right now for discussion?
Yeah, so quick review. It's a good idea. The whole estuary area represents about 100,000 acres. Within that 100,000 acres, there was just under 30,000 that was allocated for shellfish aquaculture. But within that 30,000, there was only going to be about 600 allocated for leases over the first 10 years. And so that 10 years is up. So, you know, if you're looking at percentage-wise, the 600 acres that were going to be allocated out of the 30,000 is only about 2% of the shellfish cultivation zone. And it's only about 0.0, a little over 0.5% of the entire estuary from Flanders to Napeague.
Barley, just to help, as you talk, Barley, I'm just going to screen share the program, which comes off of the Suffolk County, New York .gov Shellfish GIS.
The entire program has about 859 sites, and these are 10-acre square plots, as you can see on the map, and each one of them has a 10-acre buffer around it. So, you know, first issue is that when one looks at this map, they fear that the entire estuary is going to be taken up by these leases, and that's not the case at all, because like I said, there's only going to be 60 of these 10-acre leases allocated over the first 10 years. So anybody who's, you know, trying to demagogue that issue, everybody should be aware that there's only 60 10-acre lease sites that are going to be leased over the course of the first 10 years of the program. In East Hampton, as you can see on the screen here, there's 22 sites out of 859 for the entire program. 22 sites that were allocated in Napeague Bay. And the history there is that, well, John can speak better to this because he was actually on the original board, but the Fisheries Advisory Committee really wasn't comfortable relinquishing any area in East Hampton waters, as you can see. And this was the only area that they agreed to relinquish. The red sites on the map are those that are leased, but only 2 of them are actually active. And unfortunately, those 2 are the ones in the farthest to the left. The cursor is on. Those 2 are active, and they do employ some surface gear. Another thing to understand is that, you know, farming on the water is nothing like farming on the land, because on land you can really take up every inch of space because you're in a tractor. You can plow your rows and they're set. On water, it's very different because, you know, the current and the wind pushes you and your gear in all kinds of different directions, and it's really, really difficult to cover that whole area. And nobody really would anyway. And the lessee of those areas has been in contact with us, and he has, although he does use floating gear, he uses it for the for the early life stages of the oyster, and then sinks the oyster to the bottom as part of a compromise and as part of his business plan. So the controversy is really with those 2 sites because of the floating gear, with the local the neighbors and the local yacht club that are having issues with floating gear being in their sailing grounds. So that's kind of the thumbnail.
Barley, can I just ask you a question? I liked the letter from the trustees because it looked like the trustees, you know, did a careful job of analyzing these leases. I'm actually a little surprised at the number of lease sites that raised objections, because I see, like, you know, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 within Napeague Bay, which the trustees basically felt were dangerously closer within active navigation. There were 2 sites that conflicted similarly with navigation and recreation at the Devon Yacht Club. And I guess the trustees recommended relocating or declining to renew them. And then there were 5 and about 6 that were either unleased or inactive, in addition, that the trustees thought interfered with navigation and recreation and commercial. And I guess the trustees offered 2 other sites, 848, I'm sorry, yeah, sites 848 to 853 that you thought would be a good compromise. And then you talked about putting sites at Cherry Harbor. So I guess my question is, this letter is now going out to the county, and what kind of response do you guys expect? Are they anticipating you know, this number of suggestions to change or eliminate sites? Do you have any idea of, you know, their attitude toward the suggestions that the trustees made? It looks like the trustees did a very, you know, careful, detailed assessment, and I'm just wondering, you know, what the next step is and what you think might happen at the county level. Are they going to listen to the trustees?
Jeff, if I could just jump in here, if you can hear me.
Yeah.
A lot of that was, a lot of those recommendations and opinions came out of some of the interactions that we had, Barley and I had with the, you know, various parties over the last months. The 6 that were to the east that we recommended for elimination because of navigation problems, it was pretty much a universal opinion, because those 6 in that straight line to the east are right on top of the main navigation channel, and there's nowhere to move them inshore because of shallow water.
That's the first group in your letter, the sites 854 to 859?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Right. And then, the Devon Yacht Club has had problems with so now you have the rest of the grouping over towards the west.
Right.
Those 16 sites. Devon Yacht Club traditionally sailed in that area of the bay.
Yeah.
And nobody was aware of that 10 years ago, even though there was a representative from the yachting community on the advisory committee. That person was from Southold, and really there was no communication with boating interests in East Hampton. So that's, those sites were the main bone of contention, if you will. The 6 sites on the right side of that, basically the sites off the old Smith Meal factory, that was kind of a compromise that the Devon Yacht Club came up with and said, look, we can live with those 6 sites. So we felt as though if you could, okay, fine, live with those 6 sites, maybe a couple of sites could be added to those 2 rows. And then if those other sites to the west that were in the middle of the sailing area could be relocated, this might be a solution. This is something we've been talking about for quite a while with various parties. And Barley and I's, our idea was perhaps relocate those sites, or many of them, to other parts of town off undeveloped land. Because the 6 sites off the Smith Meal factory, which is now state park land, didn't seem to cause that much of a problem. We thought maybe other sites off undeveloped land would at least eliminate some of the visual problems for homeowners. That's where Cherry Harbor came in to view other, and the other undeveloped land in.
Can you point to Cherry Harbor?
I'm pointing to it now.
It's Gardiner's Island to southwest of the main part of the island.
And the only other undeveloped, large tracts of undeveloped land in East Hampton are around Northwest Harbor. Barley and I had discussions with people from North, and Francis as well, from people representing interests around Northwest Harbor about that. There's not a lot of sentiment in favor of putting things in Northwest Harbor, even though Northwest Harbor would be a much better site from an aquaculture standpoint. It's protected, it's got good water flow, it's much more conducive to shellfish culture than the other areas of the town.
Yeah, I think it's important to point out that the reason, Northwest wasn't originally included in the program was because the Fisheries Advisory Committee and commercial fishing interests at the time didn't want anything that could impede in any way their taking of shellfish, I think particularly scallops at the time, when we actually still had eelgrass in Northwest. At this point, I think that the scallop, natural set of scallops there has been very diminished in the last couple of years. But they didn't want anything to interfere with the extractive, fishery that was going on. Northwest has had fish traps for forever, especially, those historic sites off Barcelona and inside of Cedar Point. There have been families that have been setting fish traps there for hundreds of years in those same locations. But I think that was the genesis of pushing it all out to waters that the commercial interests weren't interested in at the time. I didn't have any concern about. And then when floating gear came on the scene, obviously that created some conflicts that wouldn't have existed otherwise. Particularly, you have Devon Yacht Club had those sites directly off of Devon, the sites that were close to navigational channels. And again, these are the lease plots are 10 acres, which, I mean, that in itself sounds scary because if you think compared to land, 10 acres, that's big. And I think people envision 10 acres for each plot of floating gear. And that's not exactly the case either. But I just want to, say also that the trustees have multiple centuries policy of really trying to navigate and allow for all sorts of various user groups to have access to the resources, whether it's the beaches or the waters. And they have not been exclusionary for the most part. They've been very inclusive. And so, I think that tradition has continued. And while I know the board members have been aware of SCALP, I thought it was important that we, as a board, at least have a look at, what's been discussed to date and some of the various issues. I've had dozens of conversations with private citizens and aquaculturists alike about the program. I think it's a program that's important to continue and expand, but we have to be able to do it in a way that meets our community standards and works out conflicts between stakeholders in it. And so I just, I wanted to commend the trustees for their excellent work on that. Anytime you can get compromise out of various stakeholders entrenched in opposing camps, I think that's something to be lauded and aspirational goal for all of us. So that's,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
May I add to this? The letter we sent is a reflection of what we heard from the interested public, the few leaseholders who are actually participating in this program. And I mean, it became clear to me during this process that we're at a place where we know our baymen are having a difficult time making a living here. This was put out there as an option for people to continue working on the water and make a living. They're now, there's so much pushback from the recreational water users that I have serious concern about how this is all going to shake out in the end. Today, it's the, SCALP, that we're not going to allow that to pretty much exist at this point, as far as I can see. And how soon will it be before they're going to want to remove the fish traps because they're in the way of the jet skis and the, I think we have to look at this and seriously look at both sides and try to figure out a true compromise for the use of these waterways. If we lose our baymen, if we lose our workers on the water, we become like any other resort. I mean, there's nothing special about us at that point. And this is just a very big concern.
But I think, from a resiliency and sustainability standpoint, that's been an underlying goal of the town board and the trustees as well. And, understanding that you can't discontinue the extractive nature of commercial fisheries solely, that, you have to put something back. And, aquaculture is a viable industry that provides, high quality seafood to our local markets and whatnot. And as you said, provides, employment on the water. And there are also significant benefits to expanding nursery habitat for our fisheries. And anyone who's participated in Barley's oyster gardening program understands that the gear itself becomes a matrix upon which marine life can exist absent eelgrass, which was a major nursery matrix within the environment, exposed fish fry, crustaceans, and other beings are gobbled up by predators and have little or no protection. And we've seen significant, I think, improvements within areas that do have the gear. Obviously, where the gear occurs and reducing any potential conflicts is really important. But the uptake of nitrogen and algae within our harbors is important too. And we've seen, algal blooms get out of balance because the natural capacity of our harbors has been reduced in terms of the number of wild shellfish and those eelgrass meadows. So I think it's something that we have to continue to look at to expand, but again, doing it within the community standards that we have. And I think there's room. Again, I'll say it again, the trustees have always been inclusive in terms of access to resources. And I think this is no time to stop. I think there has to be a balancing of that. It can't be all one way or another. So again, I look forward to finding compromises to allow all the users and stakeholders to coexist.
So can I ask a question? Is the comment period closed or is it still open?
The program is still under review. There was a comment period on some of the specific map layout, but we reached out to Sarah Davidson and said there will still be multiple opportunities for the town or the trustees and others to comment on the program.
And then I know Jeff at the start asked, and I'm sorry I didn't hear clearly what the response was. What are we expecting to hear back from the county? They received, the trustees' letter a month ago. Has there been dialogue? Are they looking at the trustees as, as the experts and they're going to follow what you folks propose? Or is this, well, okay, thanks, and, we'll take it under advisement?
John?
I would say a little bit of both. I mean, the trustees aren't the be-all and end-all here. The town has two representatives, one from the trustees, one from the town board, of equal weight. That the county listens to all comments, and many of the private people involved in this in East Hampton are also going to the county meetings and weighing in. For example, we brought a letter from the Fisheries Advisory Committee many months ago to the county meetings. Their recommendation was, their feeling was they didn't want to see the program change. They wanted to see all the sites remain where they were until they were all leased up. And
that's what John had it correct. The Fisheries Advisory Committee discussed this, I want to say now maybe early, first third of 2019. The majority of the members of that committee that were there did not want any changes to the Scout program based on they wanted to allow for as much commercial fishing activity as possible until at least all the lease sites were already all taken or leased out. They also were very adamant that there would be no lease sites moved within the minimum of at least 1,000 feet of shoreline, which would prevent the movement of traditional fishing grounds onto the pound traps, which are extremely important to our baymen right now. So that was the discussion there. To answer a little bit to Kathy's question also, the public comment and focus groups, I know I participated in one of them back, I believe, in 18. There were 12 public outreach meetings that were conducted. Over 93 people submitted comments during the period, the comment period that closed early 2019. I know they're opening it up online. They put some other focus maps up online, but they don't represent any final determinations regarding modifications or revisions to the shellfish cultivation zone. But I think, as Peter said, there's a give and take. There are some areas that, I personally think have to get out of the navigable channel, markers. A lot boat traffic that would be there, that's just appropriate. Other locations based on new technologies or new usage of floating gear, we have to try to allow a type of farmer or a mariculturist to be able to try to craft their business. So I hope any type of comments that we send to Scout are understandable, that with technology and with environmental changes, there could be other things that happen in the next 10 years. So maybe a 10-year review the next time is not appropriate. Maybe we ask also Scout to review this in 5 years or 3 to see if any of these changes are appropriate, if any of them have worked or not.
Thanks, David.
Okay, this is a topic that I think we should bring up again for further discussion among the town board members. As you know, it does affect our town. We appreciate all the effort again that the trustees have put in to date. I've attended a number of the meetings held on Scout as well. But I think the town board really should take a little bit more active role in the discussion as we move forward. And I realized that we hadn't done so to date, so I thought this could be sort of a kickoff meeting for us to take up the discussion as well. A lot of the groundwork has already been laid in the discussions that the trustees have had with the various stakeholders. So I think, really a lot of the legwork, again, has been done to date, but I'd like the board members to become further informed and have more discussion as we move forward. So I'd like to schedule this again for a topic of discussion in the future, not too distant future.
What might be helpful if we do that, is there a way to take that county map and lay in the numbers for us of the sites so that we can understand, obviously we can tell by color coded what's already been leased, but as it was said up front, that out of the 22 sites, only 2 are active. So I think, maybe we can, work within those maps. Maybe that's something Barnaby can do for us so that we could, I think it's easier when it's laid out, the numbers are there and
so there are a lot of maps that are already produced, and we can circulate them among the board members. There's been a great deal of work done on this to date, as I said. So just having some future sessions with town board members to bring us all up to date as to what's been discussed and what potential options might be going forward. Because I think we should weigh in at some point. We should have some public discussions about this as well.
Yeah, and I think we should get a recommendation from Barley, because I'm sure he's and I'm sure in some cases he's in sync with the trustees, and in conversations or back and forth we've had, that there he may have other opinions too, and I think that needs to come forward.
And I think we should, go ahead, Sully. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
Turn this speak.
Well, I just wanted to say I thought that the trustees' letter was very thoughtful, very thorough. I appreciated the back and forth that they actually went through when discussing these lease sites. And, I would like to move forward with a more thorough discussion of the town board. I think Francis's comments about Bayman, making a living off of the water is something that we need to listen to. And I'd like to keep the trustees involved in this as much as possible, as well as Barley, because I think those are the professionals that are really helping us, and our own fishery advisory committee. I mean, I think there's a whole group of folks that we need to continue to keep in the loop with this. And I think it's as important as a lot of things that this town board does, and farming issues and environmental issues. And I think this is right up at the top for me.
I agree that the presence of the trustees is very helpful here. And the letter is I think, a good framework for discussion. I was impressed by the letter and the work that went into it.
I'd just like to credit our trustee attorney, Chris Carrillo, with writing that letter. He took what was a rather fractious and contentious meeting that we had on this and distilled it into those points. And I believe he did a a good job as well.
Nice to hear. Thanks, John.
Yeah, well, thank you, trustees, for all your hard work on this. And again, we appreciate the fact that you have multiple centuries of experience of balancing the access and use of resources within our town. And we certainly like to see that continue so that everybody has a place to operate and enjoy. And so thank you all for taking the time to be with us today. And we'll circle back on this topic in the not too distant future. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Michael, do you have any callers on the line?
No, there are no callers on the line.
Okay, I'd like to move on then to our last agenda item for today, which is the Affordable Housing Overlay District for the East Hampton Housing Authority proposal, along with Georgia Green Affordable Housing Overlays proposed at 286 and 293 Mile Harbor Road. And we had discussed prior to this date affordable housing overlay districts, which will become important for properties that the town has already acquired, as well as private developer and housing authority interests in this particular property. So a necessary step will be creating an affordable housing overlay district. And Jeff, you had asked to have further discussion on this. You want to?
Yeah.
Kick this off.
As you remember, Katie came to the last meeting and brought it up, and I thought it was worth having another discussion, and I'm glad she's here and can join in because she's got some more detail. This presents sort of a similar issue that we were talking about with the hospital about what we're permitted to do or required to do under the environmental law. In reviewing it, I think this may be slightly easier because in my discussions with Katie, we've gone over the fact that while they're working on a plan, they don't really have a final plan. They're missing some of the important information they need, elevation, soil types included, which would affect the location of buildings for the proposal. So under those circumstances, I think we can go forward as a town board and look separately at the issue of the rezoning for affordable housing, bearing in mind that we're supposed to be doing it with the same degree of attention and comprehensiveness that we would if the whole package was being reviewed at the same time. But it seemed like it was a time, to have another discussion about it. And from what I can see, we are allowed to proceed. And if I've read the law correctly, it sounds like the project itself may actually be an unlisted action. Joanne Powell may have a comment on that. And unlisted action is just a category under the environmental law. And it's relevant to us because it means that if and when we make some kind of environmental determination, we could put conditions on it, which I think is important to the town board as we look forward at the type of plan that we might want to see. I think there are really two big issues. I'm not sure we can resolve them both today, but Katie and I talked yesterday actually, and they're at a stage right now with Home Community Renewal, HCR, which is a big agency involved in allocating state funds for housing projects, is probably going to award their tax credits, which are an integral part of making these plans work. The tax credits are actually purchased and sold in a market that banks create, and it's an interesting program because it was a way that the federal government had to require banks. The federal government required banks to get more involved in localities, and one of the ways, because they understood that the better banks understood the areas that they served, and the more contributions they made, the more constructive impact they can have on the community. And one of the ways to do that was this process of tax credits. They would sell tax credits, and that could then be resold in the market and purchased by institutions and individuals who need the tax credits. And it's a way of raising revenue, and at the same time, it gives the banks credit for investing in local communities. So that's the stage that they're at now in financing. Katie can probably tell you a little bit more about it. And if I understood her correctly, what she was saying is she'd like to have some statement or evidence of the town's commitment to change the zoning here to the affordable housing overlay district, which I understand. But I think an equal issue that is going to require some of our attention is the question of how many units we want. We know that if they put in a community treatment center and they get public water, they can bump it up to 60 units. This is a 14-acre property. And I think related to the issue of how many units would be appropriate is the issue of public involvement, because good as we're doing in this time of COVID, it's a big project for the town of East Hampton. Even if it's a 40, 50, 60 unit development over on 3 Mile Harbor, it's a big project. So it requires, I think, pretty serious public input. Our public hearings are okay, but I'm not sure they're adequate under our COVID procedures, to really gather in the type of buy-in and commitment and informative information that the community needs. So I have a little concern about that. So I just wanted to, have a second discussion on it, let Katie chat with us a little bit, maybe talk about the size of the project. I'm not sure we can resolve it, but I thought it was worth having another discussion on. So Katie, do you want to jump in and just give us a little of your view on the situation and, what you'd like to see from the town board?
Sure. Thank you for giving me the time to address the board. And anytime we can get this issue before the community, however many people are watching on TV or will stream video on demand, streaming it now, the more information, the better to the community. So 286 and 290 3 Mile Harbor Road comprise 14.2 acres. Joanne Powell gave her report from the planning department perspective with regard to the yield on this property and what might be appropriate. We found her report to be very supportive, and I appreciate that, all of Joanne's good work on that. It's outlined in blue on this, whoever threw that up there, thank you very much. It's outlined in blue on the map. We would, again, the Housing Authority would again partner with Georgia Good Green Ventures. We are very proud of what we're doing in Amagansett. Gansett Meadow has gone very well. We are very close to completing that. We've gotten a lot of really good feedback, and there is much interest in the applications. So our office has been chugging along for the last week or so. With that process, we're getting very close. The tentative plan, or the idea, the concept for this property would be somewhat similar: mixed income, mixed unit sizes, 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments, different rent levels for different income levels, trying to create as many fully accessible units as possible. Accessible in terms of mobility, disability, accessibility, visitability, all of that. So that's really about as far as we've gotten. We've taken a look at the topography. It wouldn't be one large building, obviously. It would be multiple buildings, maybe 6 or 8 apartments, depending on the apartment size in each building. Maybe, taking access from 3 Mile Harbor Road, situating the buildings in such a way that you really only see 1 or 2 buildings at a time. As you're pulling into the property, you'd only see 1 building from 3 Mile Harbor. We would make every effort to buffer our neighbors to the north, communicate with them. We did send out a letter. I think it was in June. It was after the town board suggested that we proactively reach out to the neighbors. We did that. One neighbor called, and we had a nice chat. And she said that she did support the project. She was environmentally concerned. She wants to make sure that this would not be a detriment to the surrounding area environmentally with wastewater treatment and proximity to 3 Mile Harbor. We had a good talk. Very nice that she reached out and spoke directly to us. I don't know if the town board has received any comments. Nothing else has gotten to me secondhand. But again, I would encourage the public to contact us. I am more than happy to discuss it. So today, our discussion, I was hoping to get a sense of whether the board is ready to move forward with this in whatever form or shape that is to take the next step. The state did release the applications just yesterday. It was about a week and a half later than they expected. I think they wanted it out July 9th, but didn't come out until yesterday, the 20th. And that is the 9% tax credit. We would have to have what they call a TA session, a technical assistance session, where we go in and meet with them. Well, I assume it would be Zoom. We meet with them and tell them where we are, how far we've gotten, what the community, the temperature of the community, the municipality, whether it's supported by the local government, and do we proceed or do we wait another year for the next round? So that's where we are. I guess hoping to get feedback from the board regarding yay or nay on whether this site this year.
Katie, can I ask you, has the property been purchased?
It's in contract.
Okay, it's been in contract quite some time, right?
Yeah, it was.
Jeff, this is Joanne. I just want to answer your question about SECRA. I would say that it was unlisted action. If the rezoning was affecting 25 acres or more, it would be type 1, but it's not.
Right. So you agree that it's an unlisted action?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that may be helpful to us.
Threshold there is 10, right?
It may be helpful because we can, under the environmental law, we have the power to impose conditions on our declaration. If we were going to issue a declaration that it didn't cause environmental impacts, we could make that declaration and impose conditions, which I think gives the town board a little control and leverage that might make us feel more comfortable about it.
Jeff, can I ask you a question? So what's your recommendation for the number of units?
I'm not sure, this is the big question on this project. And I'm a little afraid of just picking a number out of the air because, much is going to depend on the design of the buildings and how they're laid out. We might, when we see a layout of the buildings, we might, go, no, this number's too many, that number's too few. So I don't know that I want to, make, a recommendation on the number of units. I can say, I've talked to Sylvia about this a little bit, that my experience with affordable housing is that the municipality always wants to maximize the number of units for good and worthy reasons. And we got the land, let's just put as many as we can in. But that's not always the best recipe for a community acceptance, which is important. And I think there's a countervailing policy that we have to take into account, and that is like, what's it going to look like, and is it going to fit in with the town of East Hampton?
I take exception with that. I don't think that it's always the town or the town board pushing to maximize the number of units. I think that we're always taking into account community character and, the schools and, what the community will find acceptable. So, I as I say, I take exception with that. But I was just, I'm guessing that you're privy, being the liaison to the housing authority, to some of their plans, and I'm sure they probably have a number that they need to meet as number of units to make this a viable project, right? Because otherwise it's not worth.
I just want to agree with you that the town is doing a balancing test. Undoubtedly, when we do these things, we do take into account the balancing test. I'm just saying there's some pressure to maximize the yield. I don't know. I've only seen the plan once, very briefly, and it was. I don't even think it was completed. I was just sitting at a table with the members of the housing authority. They were sort of discussing the design of the entry road, which is important on visibility, which actually, I think bolsters the idea that we need to look at what we're looking at before we just throw numbers around. Because one of the things they were talking about was, should it be a straight-in road, which is probably more economical, or should it be a winding road, which is probably more aesthetically pleasing? Because if you wind your way in, you can set the view shed that people are going to see, so that they don't get overwhelmed by all the buildings seeing at once. So, design elements may affect how you or I feel about the number of units. So I'm a little afraid to just sort of, throw darts at a board. Somebody says, I like 60, somebody else says, I like 40, somebody says, I like 42. Because I think, we have to look at what we're looking at a little bit. So maybe the next step would be, to look at sort of a concept plan. My sense of the board when we last spoke was that we seemed to be pretty supportive of putting an AHO on this property. That was my sense, and perhaps we could confirm that or not confirm that today. And I don't know, maybe the next step, I think we have to have some kind of drawing, even if it's not a final drawing, just so that when we talk about numbers, we, have something to look at that would influence our judgment about the numbers. I mean, do you have a number that you have in mind, Kathy?
Well, my thought is, when I think about design elements and such, that's not my purview, right? I would think that's the purview of the planning board and the ARB, and not the town board.
If I could just jump in, the way I approach this is, here's a property that qualifies to be designated as an AHO. The town board has consistently tried to move forward on creating opportunities for more affordable housing within the town. This is a property that has been identified, and Joanne did a pretty extensive memo on it. There's clearly a demonstrated need, and I agree with Kathy in terms of trying to decide numbers. I don't think we should be deciding that. We should be deciding whether or not the property is appropriate for affordable housing, and whether or not we should put this overlay district into place. We have a town code that spells out the maximum number of units per acre that could be used, could be developed here, and a whole set of review standards that have to be met. And I think, this is just the very first stage moving forward to allow that process to then take place. I think, we certainly have enough need in this town that the maximum number could be proposed, but after review, it may be found that it's not really acceptable to have that many, that the number and the design location of the structures will play into that as well. So I think, rather than try to put too fine a point on it, that this is really, it's literally an overlay. It's basically putting an overlay of affordable housing opportunities on this property, and then there's a whole review process that then follows, including full secret review, environmental review, layout and design standards. So I think let's go ahead and just get the ball rolling with an affordable housing overlay and let that process play out. There's certainly going to be a lot of public input. Katie knows very well, having just developed Gansett Meadows, a lot of engagement with the school district, with the neighboring residences, with the overall community in a discussion and a development of a plan that the community accepts. And that's the process that the planning board would undertake. So at this point, I think it's just a matter of putting an overlay in place and then following our well-established rules and guidelines as to how it develops.
Did I understand, Jeff, for you to say that we can put conditions, though, on the AHO just by, without a plan? We can say, should...
You could, under secret, yes, you could condition, assuming, I'm going to make an assumption that, the board supports the AHO, and if they wanted to move to adopt an affordable housing overlay, that's an action that requires secret. And under the secret procedures, yes, we could impose conditions. So theoretically, we could say, we like this idea, but given what we know, we think for example, we could set a maximum number of units. Yes, we could condition our approval of the AHO. That is legal to do.
Yeah, I don't know that I personally would support that approach. I think it really should wait until the public really gets to weigh in and determine what and how.
Yeah, I think that's prudent. I know that we've done more than one public hearing on an occasion or two for an important subject, and this is the time of COVID. I would recommend, if we're going to schedule a public hearing, if that's what you want to do, that we maybe schedule 2 public hearings, since it is a time of COVID, because I think the more you get the community engaged, the easier it becomes, frankly. It's better to know early what the reaction is of the community.
In some ways, personally, I feel the community is more engaged now during COVID than before.
Well, you don't get 50
at least they've been highly communicative to me.
Well, you don't get 50 people at a public hearing, though.
No. And you're not physically going to get 50 people at a public hearing. I'm not sure that it would garner that kind of attention and involvement, pre-COVID, but we certainly can take that into consideration.
So if the board's inclined, I need to know, do you want to schedule a public hearing on this? Is that what you want to do for next step here?
Yes.
I would, yes.
I have just a couple of questions to Katie or also Joanne. I know there's a property to the north of it. It's a substandard lot width property that's about 2.7 acres. Do you know if there's been any outreach to that individual? It's a very long property. It's got to be 3,000 linear feet. I don't know what the yield on that property would be, if it's subdividable, or if that could be potentially into this project that would allow for a greater buffer area, particularly the residents that would be on Harborview Avenue.
We, to my knowledge, the Housing Authority has not spoken to that property owner. It's undevelopable.
Sorry, can you say it one more time?
It's
undevelopable?
Undevelopable. I think it's too long and narrow. I'm not
it's
sure.
Too narrow to meet the town code, but they could get potentially variances. I mean, one portion is only 55 or so feet wide, another portion, which is actually a separate tax map number.
It is capable of being developed into one lot. And what I had thought that maybe if the developer doesn't reach out to get it, that maybe it would be a CPF purchase.
Either way, I think that property should be looked into the viability adding into this project, either for, again, a buffer for greater lot area, or also for development. I would recommend that. Harborview Avenue is it is a street that has a lot of community into it. Okay, it's been there for a long time. The other areas that that this property would back up to is an industrial mine right now. I think we have to make sure we look at and take all accounts to the people that live on Harborview Avenue just to get their comments. And yes, Jeff, I would appreciate bringing this to a public hearing. Not once, twice is fine too.
Yeah, we sent, the Housing Authority sent letters to all of the residents on Harborview. That's the community we reached out to.
That's what I said last time. Thank you very much for this. It's ahead of it.
Any other questions or comments? Guess what? It sounds like the board's ready to move forward to schedule a public hearing. So we'll work on getting that done. Okay. Thank you very much. That concludes our work session agenda items. Do we have any other callers on the phone, Michael?
No, there are no callers on the line.
Thanks for joining us today, Katie.
Okay, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
So we have now liaison reports. Kathy, you have a liaison report for us?
Sure. So we'll start off, as I always do, with Human Services. If anyone is in need of assistance, please reach out to the Human Services Department at 631-329-6939. They continue to deliver, 5 frozen meals a week to those seniors that are in need. We currently are tracking with 290 clients a week. And through July 17th, which was last Friday, we've delivered 22,252 meals. So earlier this month, folks in the Human Services Department decided to reach out, not that we haven't been making weekly calls, but we reached out with a survey to those folks that are receiving those frozen meals. And we called 290 folks, and about 60% responded to their survey, because we wanted to find out how satisfied they were with the frozen meals they were receiving from the town. And 96% were either very satisfied or satisfied with the meals that they were receiving. Only 4 folks thought that it needed improvement. We asked them about the extras we were putting in the meals, like the oatmeal, the tea bags, the bread, the bagels, the salad, and salad is a big hit. 91% are grateful for the salad, and our seniors are also enjoying their carbs. They like their bread and their bagels and their oatmeal. We also went on to ask them if they would participate in activities if we were to use video conferencing, and they were not particularly interested. 74% said no, and about half of our seniors have the ability to video conference or Zoom, but most were not interested in doing activities that way. We then asked if they had suggestions on how we could improve our meals and our service, and 75% of those that responded said that they didn't think that there was any way that they could improve. So then the 25% that did, talked about from their perspective, some would like to see more fruit, more vegetables, some want more fish, some don't want fish at all. So everybody gave their personal preferences. We also asked how they were feeling about the present COVID-19 safety measures. And of the 123 people that responded to that question, almost 2/3 of them were feeling good, very good, excellent, or wonderful about the safety measures that were in place. They thought that the drivers are wearing their masks when they're delivering food, they're social distancing, they feel safe with the measures, and that they like that the meals or the packages are left on the doorstep. And then we asked, if there were any additional comments that they wanted to, convey to the folks in the senior program, whether it was nutrition program or transportation. And many of the responses were that they were just very appreciative of the program that the town was offering. Some said they used to spend money at the IGA, but now they don't have to because of the frozen meals that we provide, and that the town is doing a great job, and that there's great staff. Meals are delicious and a nice variety. I feel like they are gourmet meals, very much satisfied. The people who deliver the meals are beautiful people, so special. Believes that we were a lifesaver to many in the community and that closing soon saved lives. The seniors are so lucky to have this program. Opening the nutrition program should be a priority for the supervisor, as many seniors live on their own and need the socialization. They're impressed with how the town is treating its seniors, and the staff is very professional. Impressed with the thoughtfulness of the small items that are included with meals. The town is wonderful. Town Police Department is doing a really wonderful job and always has. Whoever is doing the cooking is doing a great job. Town is doing a wonderful job, touches her heart. Very much misses coming to the center for lunch. Looking forward to coming back to the center. Now, just switch gears. Over the last few weeks, I've been working with some parents and coaches for the YMCA Hurricane Swim Team. As you recall, the YMCA, under the Suffolk County Department of Health Services, has opened up the indoor pool there, but there's only allowed one swimmer in each lane, so that's 6 swimmers per hour. So we were trying to look at ways to get creative and try to figure out a way for the Hurricanes to get their swim practice in. And we reached out, we asked John Rooney, and he reached out to Montauk Downs State Park to see if we could use that pool. But unfortunately, there was no mechanism in place. We had reached out to Johnny Ryan Jr. to see if we could have our swimmers, our kids open swim at Albert's Landing. And that was something we were seriously pursuing. The YMCA was on board. They had provided the liability insurance. And then when we got down to numbers and realized that there really weren't, it was only a handful of the swim team that were looking to swim and keep up with it and be trained. It turns out that they can accommodate it at the YMCA. So the kids, I think that they're looking at having 2 groups of 12 at this point. So the swim team can use the YMCA to train, which is good news. And then if you recall, back in June, we had given a $1,000 grant to iTry, which is a adolescent girls empowerment program, because they were looking to do some signage around town, because there's a lot of folks that are using our roads. There's, with gyms and fitness studios not open, people are running and walking and biking, and realize that not everybody understood the rules of the road. So they put together these lawn signs, and the town sponsored them. I'm sure you've seen them around town. There are 2 signs, one that says ride with traffic. So if you're riding your bike, you should be going with traffic. And if you're running or you're walking, you should be against traffic so you can see the cars coming at you. Just walking in my neighborhood, I can see that there's a lot of folks that aren't really aware of the rules of the road. So we're going to take this to social media. I know iTry has posted it on their social media. Steve Lynch signed off on the placement of the signs around town. And we really appreciate Teresa Roden and iTry for putting this project together and giving us an opportunity to partner with them. Switching gears to County Road 41, Springs Fireplace Road, that reconstruction project is ongoing. I spoke to Steve Lynch actually this morning, and they had started out with 2 crews doing drainage. Now they're doing drainage and sidewalks. According to Steve, he said that they're doing a good job and they're moving faster than he expected.
And Kathy, I just step in there with you. As you know, I live in Springs with you also. It's probably one of the largest municipal projects that the town's gone through as far as the road reconstruction, and they are putting an ample amount of drainage. There's a lot of diversion of traffic now because of it. But I look forward to see the final product on there. But just everyone have patience right now, going up and down the corridor right now. This is fully under construction.
Yeah. And then lastly, we were scheduled to have a spring CAC meeting tonight, but we've canceled it due to low attendance. So we are scheduled for a meeting, our meeting in August. And that's what I have for today.
Thank you, Kathy. David?
Yes, thank you. Just brief one, a couple of big things still. The Beach Advisory Group had our running post-weekend exit discussion. The beaches are very busy this weekend. Everything went well in place. We are looking now primarily at some of the historical things we have to work on is trash collection, beach raking. There's a large amount of individuals staying on the beach later at night, of course, because the restaurants are closed, and we're making sure that we try to make sure that our trash collection crews and then also our beach rakes are operational right now. We are adapting as needed on there. The Beach Advisory Committee stated the beaches are very busy. We continue doing our social distancing on the beaches right now with our lifeguards and our beach ambassadors, which are working well. Beaches were not at capacity, parking lots were closer to it, but the weather is hot and there's a lot more people on the weekends than not. What I do have to say, I think Peter might touch on it later, a lot of the enforcement agencies that are part of this Beach Advisory Committee, and actually even our Buildings and Grounds assisted, there was a lot of enforcement activities this weekend. And I have a big congratulations to everyone that's assisted with them, including the Montauk Fire Department and Coast Guard. If you don't mind, if I just share a screen with everyone right now, I wanted to bring up the Amagansett parking lot, if you don't mind. I'm just going to play this on here. I mentioned to everyone that I wanted to discuss the recommendations. We still haven't gotten the formal letter from the chair. I hope they anticipate that shortly. But again, I wanted just to show you what the discussion points were. Very simply, I just took out the overall plan that we have, and I marked it out in a couple of different ways. Right now, the green sections down here were going to be the recommendations on the right and the left of the lot for 30-minute parking, which there currently is 30-minute parking in those areas, but it would be an expansion of that parking. The current parking lot.
Can I just, David, so the expansion of that parking, so how many more spots are you adding to 30 minutes?
8, 11, I think we have 8 right now, so we might be adding 4 more.
Okay.
There's the whole southern row there.
The handicaps, though, are longer term, right?
The handicaps all in the main parking lot here would be the yellow, which would be the 2-hour parking. That also
next to the green, I'm sorry, next to the green, you have handicap spaces, correct?
That's correct, sir. Yes.
So those are long-term?
Maybe 2-hour parking, yep. That would also include 2-hour parking for the top left corner here, which is where the EV charging stations are, and also a couple more, 2 more handicap parking spots.
By the restroom.
And by the restroom, exactly.
Yeah.
On the top right where the red is, and I only put in red, just it was easy to show up. This would be the recommendation. It would be for 72-hour parking, including the handicap parking spot in there. They did have a recommendation to make it for only resident-only parking in that location too. And the last discussion point was then also about allowing for a placard system for individuals that that have properties that are directly attached to the locations, to the parking lot, that do not have off-street parking, which there's only a couple of those. I believe there are 13 units that have that right now.
And where are those units where they're?
Sure. So one of the units is above the old post office, just to the east of the library. There's another unit above the wine store. I'm just working my way down. And I think there's 2 other units that are above where the Sofa is right now. It's either 2
That's a long walk for people at night, no?
To the parking lot?
Yeah, if I live over the wine store and I can only park where it's outlined in red?
No, it would be anywhere in there.
Okay.
But with a placard system on there.
So I can park in yellow if I have a placard.
That's not green. Yes.
Okay.
So those are the discussion points. Again, the reason I continue to bring this up right now is that that municipal project's moving forward. They laid down all the conduits in. They laid down the concrete. Electrical work is in for the lighting, which will come at the end. And I'm looking for a milling and paving date again, from the contractor, from South Fork Asphalt, and their construction manager, so I can alert then the residences and also the businesses of what the shutdown might be. And immediately after that, we'll be coming striping. So I wanted just to let the board know about this. Again, we would have to do this through a public hearing, of course. The public hearing then would be, we would have to notice in public hearing, then would be for enforcement. So I'll forward this along then. Again, I'll request the recommendation in writing from the ACAC. But I think it's a board discussion now about what we see in there. Currently, right now, we will be having 174 parking spots in the lot right now. That would actually then, we have nine handicap spots, which is well above what is needed by ADA regulations for a lot of that size. And the recommendation from ACOC was to remove a couple of them. There was one removed in the redesign based on the layouts of some drainage that was there. I would prefer leaving the ADA spots as is right now, as designed appropriately, because they're going in with ramps instead of removing any. I don't mind having more ADA spots and locations than necessary. Technically, all we need 6 plus 1 van, which one has to be a van. Right now we're at 9, so we're going at least 50% more. Yes, maybe 50% more than we actually need, which I think is laudable by the town board to do so, and I think it's good planning. And that's for a board discussion. I don't know if there's any discussion you want to have about this now, or Peter, if you want us just to discuss it at a later time.
Let's put it on for a later discussion.
Okay, so I'll get some more information. Maybe we discuss it.
I can work out time-wise.
If I can maybe lay out a time frame on this, if we discuss it on the 4th, maybe we schedule it for a public hearing on the 6th of August. Public hearing being on August 20th. I think that would work pretty close to what's necessary here.
Okay. The only other thing that I'll mention, and we touched on it briefly, I think, in the past, was that we've had a request from one of the properties adjacent to the parking lot about the upgrading of their septic to a low nitrogen system that would require an easement be granted for additional leach pools I think on the town property. I think there are a number of businesses and property owners that have such easements with the town. So I think it might be worth further investigation to look into that, if that's something the board would support or not, and where that might take place.
Okay.
That's the only, it reminded me with the discussion of the parking lot, because that's been done in the past, and obviously we want to help facilitate upgrades of systems that are not low nitrogen wherever possible. So something for further consideration.
I'm going to move on, if you don't mind. I'll just move on to the next one. As I was doing my rounds of Montauk and other locations and meetings, I'll screen share again. I stopped in the second house, and the second house restoration is ongoing on the external side. For all our mill workers, those are 4 by 8 whole heart sections of mahogany going up on the outer deck. Some beautiful wood. They're putting in the decking right now. I know Bob Hefner was out there on Monday. After they've received approximately about a little over a third of their windows, which they're going through installation. The project is also moving along. Again, still on the time frame, delayed because of COVID, of course, potentially for November, to have the structure weatherproof from the outside. So that project is moving forward. I think I only have one more, and again, it's my good moment. I was in Montauk at Otis Road, checking out Otis Road, and this nice little girl and her dad, Michaela Miller from Montauk, came out and they did a beach cleanup. And it had to be 20 to 25 pounds of trash they brought up there one Wednesday afternoon. Hot at Wednesday, and she had a smile on her face. She did have a mask on initially. I asked her to take it off for the smile, just to let you know. I called. I was very proud and happy to be there. I ended up calling Tony Littman, and they sent down their trash crews to pick this up specifically. So I wanted to take a picture with her dad. It's also blessings, and applaud her in front of the town board. Keep it up, young woman. Thank you.
Yeah, that's excellent. We love seeing that, and I wish everybody was a little bit more conscientious, and then we wouldn't see episodes like this where people took it upon themselves to have to clean up after others. But great job, Michaela Miller, you said?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, congratulations, Michaela. Thank you so much on behalf of the town board and the citizens of East Hampton for helping keep the place clean. Love it.
And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Sylvia?
Yeah, the Business Recovery Group met last week. We were reminded that the professional organization called New York Hospitality Association has sent out forms to submit for people to quarantine if folks come from 21 states, now 22 states, because of the rising COVID infections. And that's mostly for, people that are staying in locations. Although the discussion was that there weren't, some hotels are not even accepting reservations from states that are in this list of 22. So, and if they do come, then they have to quarantine and they have to fill out that form that says they're going to quarantine for 14 days. They also want to know if the town board would like to consider a modest sidewalk display. The village has done so. It's of merchandise. I can send you all the village merchandise, their village application. It really, theirs only allows for people to put out one type of object that they're selling. They're not putting out a table for all their wares so people can pick them up and touch them and then walk in and try to buy them. It's just a reminder of this is what you'll find in our store. So it's not necessarily something, and so I'm not sure. We did pass that around, and we have another meeting tomorrow, so I'll be able to discuss it with the recovery group tomorrow if it's something that they want to even move forward with and recommend to the town board. And you can also email me if you want to consider that at all.
So the village's laws basically allows for a very modest display of items that would be sold within the store, just sort of to let people passing by know that the store is open and this is what they might be able to find inside. It's pretty modest. So I know that
it isn't for racks of clothing. That's banned, or any mannequins are also prohibited in the village. And and they have to be. Theirs actually said they have to be on their property that they own, that the building owns. So in this case, we would probably look at that as well as people putting property on the right of way. So, but it's very small. So I don't know, and they can put out something that in theirs in the village, a sandwich board that says they're open and that reminds people of what type of merchandise you might find inside. So, so that is something that they were considering as well. And the other ask was from the Chamber of Commerce, and they were in Montauk asking how we felt about doing music on the green in Montauk, bringing that back. I think there's a lot of different feelings of whether or not, people would actually socially distance themselves while they're listening to the music, but it is an ask, and I said I would talk to the town board. So I don't know how all of you feel about doing the music on the green in Montauk towards the latter part of the summer.
I don't know if we can under the executive orders. I mean, that would be.
I think my big concern, and I expressed it to the committee, was that if you hold it in a location where you really can't regulate the size of the gathering, then I have concerns about that. And I don't see how you can regulate the size of a gathering on the green.
The only thing I see is I think you would have to do it through a drive-in type music like I've seen before. Some places up island.
You'd have to be able to regulate in some way the number of people coming to enjoy the music, and I don't see how you could do that on the green, really. But that's just my concern. I don't know how the other board members feel about it.
No, I have a concern about, you can't regulate how many people are going to be there. And, I don't think we want to see people putting up fences around the green so that you can corral the people and then you'd have to have somebody taking attendance. They may be willing to do that, but.
And then how do you keep people from gathering outside the fence? I mean, it's just.
So.
I don't see how you do it. And right now we're still under the 50 person gathering maximum. So I don't think we're there yet. I sure would like to be there. I don't think we're there yet.
Peter, they have not rescinded the 50% capacity at the beach.
No, they haven't.
No.
And that's been a question that I've posed numerous times to the governor's representatives on the call as to what kind of timeline or game plan they have for that. And they've not really come back with anything. Sadly, I'm not sure that they will, given some of the other communities who've experienced issues like Long Beach, with the huge gathering they had of young people, 800 plus, showing up there kind of through social media spontaneously, and the problems that caused, nobody really socially distancing or wearing masks. The governor even caught, his attention, and the governor's rep talked about the stupidity of doing that. And, I'm still concerned that people, won't take this seriously because the numbers are still relatively low here, and that we'll see a spike or an increase, because that could happen. We're seeing it happening all over. I think we still need to be very careful about everything. And, I would really like to be able to start opening up the sales of non-resident permits, but again, I have a hard time figuring out how we do that and maintain our 50% beach occupancy at this time. Any of the ways that we have available to us to sort of regulate and control the numbers on the beach we've been employing. I don't want to have to close down beaches because of over occupancy.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree.
Yeah. And also, Sylvia, so we're also, just so you know, we're not taking reservations for like town picnic areas and Fort Pond House at this time and I think the Village Green kind of falls into that realm,
Yeah, so Kathy, you've got a resolution on today for another surf camp.
Surf lessons, not
surf
camp.
Lessons. Okay, surf lessons. And, I have gotten, and I've emailed you about this, some complaints that there's maybe they're already going on and we haven't given them permission, or, and I didn't see the one that we already have, okayed for down at Ditch Plains. It seems as though there's complaints about them taking up an awful lot of space and that they're not doing social distancing, not wearing masks in the parking lot because they're in a wetsuit, and where do you put the mask? They're in a wetsuit and they're carrying their surfboard and they don't have other stuff with them, which, I'm not sure that that's my problem. My problem is they still need to be socially distant and still need to wear the mask. And I'm hoping that the lifeguards that are down there are making sure that people in that parking lot in particular are wearing masks. I know they do at other parking lots where I've been over the summer, and their lifeguards have been great. I mean, they've got their ambassadors out there and they're really doing a good job. So the only complaint that I've had is in Montauk, so at Ditch Plains.
At all three or just a dirt lot?
At Dirt.
Yeah, it's a super busy spot.
Yeah, and obviously, special events committee, we're not enforcement. I mean, we have to, we can relay that to the lifeguards so that I think it's the captains down there are well aware, and Michaels is well aware, and PD.
Kathy, one of the issues I think is just understanding who's participating in what with which business. I wonder if like colored bracelets or
we do that.
Some type of T-shirts that's currently done.
We do the color. We request the colored band bracelets
for each business that's down there.
Well, so right now the town board has authorized Corey's Wave to give lessons,
Right.
And today there's a resolution for Austin's Surf LLC to give lessons. So we will have only, in the past there were other businesses, not necessarily a dirt lot, but other businesses throughout the town that came in for a permit. But those are the only two that came in for a permit and they both wanted dirt lot.
Okay, so there's a visual designation that could be readily observed.
Yeah. Now I can't tell you, how religiously they're following that, but they are to be wearing a band. Yes.
All right. So I think that's probably something that we're going to have to monitor, because I've also been included on some of the complaints about that.
And as you see at the last resolved, if folks aren't following the conditions of the permit, that, the town has the right to suspend or revoke, for failure to maintain compliance. So that is, also, if we want the town attorney's office to send out a letter just as a reminder to the folks that are holding permits, we can certainly do that.
We have the band or T-shirt requirement in the permit that we issue. I don't recall that.
It was a condition at the bottom of the permit.
Okay. Well, that's helpful to know. I wasn't aware of that aspect of it. So
okay, so and
it requires resources of the town to ensure that people are complying.
So,
but they're okay.
Does it say it in that they have to have identifying bracelets or identifying something on that they belong to this particular entity? Does it say it in the resolution?
It doesn't say it in the resolution. It was it was on the condition of the permit.
Okay, so it says it on the permit. All right. Changing gears to anti-bias task force. I'm just going to remind people that the diversity program is going to be filmed at LTV, and it is Teresa Roden. We already talked about her earlier today with iTry. She is the guest interview. It's July 29th, and I want to thank Teresa for doing the interview, for Chief Mike Tracy for setting all of this up, and to LTV for their continued support of our community and the anti-bias task force. Next is energy sustainability. There's a small group that's meeting and working with Lauren Steinberg, and thank Lauren for all of the energy, literally, that she's putting into the energy sustainability together. They're putting together a webinar. I think I've spoken about it before, about CCA. There seems to be some people that want more information.
Mm-hmm.
They've engaged speakers from Sustainable Westchester, LIPA, and Bedford 2020, which is also another CCA community, and more. They haven't put all their speakers together. It will be probably mid to late August when they'll do the webinar, and LTV has agreed that it will air the webinar after it is completed, so you can watch it live, and then you'll be able to see it again on LTV. So again, thank LTV for their participation in community efforts like CCA, which is Community Choice Aggregation. Sometimes I forget, people don't know what all of these things are. So please tune in, and I'll give you a firm date when I know when the webinar is. I'll either I'll email it to you, or hopefully it'll be during a work session. And we can also put it on our website, because I think people will be interested. And that's all I have today.
Can I just loop back? So I just pulled up the draft permit, for instance, for Austin Surf LLC. So it says students and instructors must wear black wristbands with bright colored lettering that reads Austin Surf LLC. So when we issue permits, I don't know off the top of my head what color Corey's wave is, but they have the same requirement.
Okay, and just to make sure that the lifeguards and Ed Michaels and Marine Patrol is aware of that.
Yeah, and they get sent the permits. So the standard operating procedure when we issue the permits, it goes out to all of the public safety groups.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thanks, Kathy. That's helpful. Okay, Jeff, you have a liaison report?
Yeah, I met with LTV, the LTV board, and the news is not exciting, but probably necessary to know. They're starting to be able to go back and do some deferred maintenance. They've got some equipment there that's aged out that they've been trying to hold together with paper clips and wire. So they've installed one new air conditioning unit. They've got a second one that's 14 years old, and a third unit which had a compressor problem and all 4 fans seized up. So they've got a lot of HVAC repairs to be doing, and they're finally getting around to doing them. They are reporting that they're probably going to be fully installed with fiber optic cable, which is good news for them and for us probably as well, within the next 7 to 10 days. And we should see some improvement in quality, but there's certainly improvement in resiliency, and it will help with their efforts to bring in people who want to use the facilities that do more sophisticated work, because fiber optic does a better job of transmitting. And they're talking to one very major network about a photo shoot at LTV, and the possibility of using the facility in the event that New York City shuts down. If you can believe that, some rather large interests are concerned about the fact that COVID could resurge and they might shut New York City down. We hope that doesn't happen. So all in all, they're within their budget. They're doing pretty well, but they probably could use a slight boost. I know these are hard times for the town, but I would hope that we all recognize what a great job LTV has done to help us get through the COVID time, and maybe they could get a little bit of a cost of living adjustment, which we could talk about during the budget process. But I wanted to throw a pitch in for them because I think we all have been able to rely on LTV and the staff. Jason and Mike and all the crowd has done a great job for us, and I wanted to say
a symbiotic relationship.
I think it's really bumped them into a more important role, and they know it and they like it. They've really made it possible for us to function as a board. It's really a terrific job that they've done, and the Zoom meetings have been great. They're really they're pretty effective now, and I'm liking them. I wanted to talk a little bit about the airport. Last week we got the governor's order that he wanted warnings about quarantining if you're coming in from those other states, and he also issued an order that said that regional airports and Port Authority airports had to actually take data, contact tracing data, and we were running around last week trying to see whether or not that applied to our airport. It didn't for a while before it did, and during the time that it didn't, we were a group of us, including Peter, Jim Brundage, me, were trying to figure out how we could jump onto that even before it was required and get the contact tracing information. And Jim advised the group, who all were sort of working in tandem, that generally at other airports, they had used the operator of the facility at the airport as the point person to collect the data. And I have to send a thank you out to Steve Tuma of Sound Aviation, because he really stepped up as a good neighbor and said that he was in the best position to get the information, and took it right over and had downloaded it on iPads. And we are getting copies over to Jim Brundage, so we've got confirmation. I thought it was very neighborly of Steve Tuma, and I really appreciate him doing it. And I think the town deserves some recognition, because we got on the idea of obtaining that information even before the governor stated that he had changed his mind and that it applied to all airports. So we were up and running on it right on time, and it worked very nicely.
I appreciate your efforts on that, Jeff. That was helpful, and we we got the word through the announcement by the governor, and then questions we brought up on the call with the state included, well, what about other forms of transportation as well? So, and they were not really that forthcoming in terms of letting us know whether or not a general aviation airport was mandated to do this or not. Jeff and I have discussed this, thought it would be a good idea to do it anyway. And so I appreciate you helping to facilitate that at the airport with the FBO operator, Steve Tuma, to get that.
Can I ask a question? So when they say Port Authority airport, so that means the New Jersey airports as well.
Newark.
So it includes Newark and Teterboro.
Then you have regionals, which are like Republic Airport. And the interesting thing that I found was when we tried to find out what Republic was doing, because it's a state-owned airport, they had no idea about the requirement. So, we were, as Jeff said, out ahead of the curve on figuring this out, which we've been doing since day one, and that's been our drill.
Do we know if Montauk Airport's capturing this information?
I don't know about Montauk Airport.
That's a private airport, and I don't know about that either. We could certainly inquire. But I think generally the flights coming into Montauk are going to be coming from, are not going to be coming from outside the tri-state area. And if they landed in New York already, if those passengers came into one of the other airports in New York, they would have already been informed and would have had to register before the next leg of the flight. So probably not as much of a concern, but we certainly could follow up on that.
We had some traffic concerns over the weekend, some rather irate residents near and far. And again, I checked in with Jim in reference to one particular person who was complaining about a barrage of helicopters. And what it turned out is, you may remember, one of the weekend days had a low ceiling. And instead of now using VFR, special VFR, which is particularly dangerous, apparently in conjunction with discussions with Jim Brundage, the pilots are now using IFR, instrument flight routing, which is handled, from up west, and is a much safer way to mix in with the other traffic. So I'm glad about that, but it does result in a noise barrage. But Jim provided me with a pretty detailed explanation of what was happening, and at least we can say it's safer. So I wanted to mention that. And then the only other thing I wanted to talk about was the ongoing issue of posting transcripts on the website. Again, we had a nice group interaction of people who were cooperatively working, including John Jilnicki, me, Heath was very important in that, and the town attorney's office in general. And we did finally manage to get the system rolling and get the credit card to pay the cost. And we caught up with the Zoning Board of Appeals meetings, which were the meetings that were causing some anxiety. So that's up and running, and I think we have a system. And Heath put it on a very visible place on the website where it can be easily seen and accessed. So we're in much better shape, and I think we're got it under control at this point. And that's all I have.
So Jeff, when it goes past 2 weeks, will the transcripts come down or do they stay up?
Well, once they go past 2 weeks, we can decide. Actually, it closes the record. So I don't know. I guess it would be whatever the board wants to do.
I don't think there's any plan at this point to take them down, but
I would leave them up. I mean, I think they're informative. I don't see why you wouldn't leave them up.
I agree. I would just leave them up.
Yeah.
Somebody might want to refer back to them.
Yeah, they provide a lot of information.
If we start running out of space, which I don't think we'll do, then if space is a concern, maybe we'll take them down or put them in a different location. But
he did a very good job on that. I really appreciate his input. He was very helpful. And
let me just say that any hearings that have to do with something that the town board has done, I have been moving those into minute tracks. So we will always have it there too, if they ever do come down.
Thank you.
So those transcripts, for anybody who's listening wants to know, if you go to the town's website, you'll see there's a box on the left that actually says transcripts. It's just that simple on the homepage. And you click on that and it'll give you the various boards and those transcripts of those meetings. It's just under agendas and minutes in that box on the left on the homepage.
Did I just follow up, Jeff? You talked last Tuesday, you were going to send us a link to the July Wainscott CAC meeting. And
I did send that around.
I didn't receive it. Could you resend it, please?
Yeah, I sent that around.
I received it from you, Jeff. I don't know, maybe Kathy was left off the email.
Looked at it again, but I did receive it.
Okay, I'll do it again, Kathy.
Thank you.
It's not impossible. I made a mistake on.
Well, it's also, we've been all having issues with email, things going into the quarantine, only getting, town emails and delayed outside the town emails. So there's, it's been a real issue. And fortunately, Heath and the IT is on top of it, but it's
I'll get it out to you.
Been a rough couple weeks.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. So we're experiencing heat wave. This is the hottest weather we've had all season, and obviously it's mid-July. And, there are a lot of folks here. A lot of people come here in the summer to escape the heat of the city. Obviously, they came early to escape the threat of the virus to the city, but full-on summer, everybody. And honestly, I'm beginning to wonder if maybe there aren't more people here than in a normal summer. I'm not sure. We probably need a head counter at the beginning of the year so we can figure out whether or not we've reached occupancy or not. I think we're probably have done that. No vacancy. But in any case, that causes some other issues, and one of them is the demand on our local resources. Our most important resource is drinking water, and Suffolk County Water Authority would like us to amplify their call for water conservation at this time. The Water Authority provides safe public drinking water to many homes throughout the town. We do have private wells as well. A certain percentage of our public gets their water that way, but for those who are using Suffolk County Water Authority public water, they're asking that you please conserve, that you change the settings on your irrigation so that you are not using water for irrigation between the hours of 3 a.m. and 7 a.m. So schedule your irrigation for other hours outside of the 3 a.m. to 7 a.m. And they also ask that you water on alternate days as well, that you don't water every single day. So if folks could please help out with that, it will alleviate some of the extreme demand and prevent shortages on public water lines during this heat wave and beyond throughout the summer. Also, yesterday we hit a peak load relief event. And as the town board will recall, we signed up with PSEG to remove certain town buildings from the grid under severe peak load demand in order to help meet that demand throughout the grid. Yesterday was one such event, and our generators, which are gas-fired and cleaner than the diesel ones, went into operation at 4 p.m. and that event ended at 8 p.m. The town gets a payment from PSEG that is not insignificant for supplying grid by reducing the load to the grid. In addition, they cover the fuel costs that we incur to run those generators. This is really a stopgap measure. What we really need is additional energy sources for the South Fork. As public, I'm sure by this point, after years of discussions, are aware that the South Fork wind farm will help bring additional clean energy to the grid here on the South Fork and elsewhere on Long Island to help meet those peak demands. We've had pretty significant amount of wind lately, especially offshore. So the generation during the summer would be helpful. This will also forestall the necessity of additional fossil fuel plants on Long Island and in East Hampton area to serve us. Currently, we have peaker plants within the town. There's a peaker plant that runs off Fuel Lane, and I'm greeted by the sight of a toxic plume coming out of that plant every morning on my way to work as I look across the Long Lane farm fields. It's a really stark comparison, seeing that toxic plume of diesel being belched into our atmosphere here with the Truxell Farm wind turbine adjacent to it. I'd love to take a photograph of it sometime just to show the juxtaposition. We have choices to make as we live our lives, and I think especially with increasing populations here and elsewhere, that we need to change the way that we live in a way that is more sustainable and makes us more resilient at the same time. So I'll just remind folks of that. I also want to remind people to be careful. Please be careful when you're out boating. We had a tragic accident and a fatality in Fort Pond just recently. A boater went overboard and drowned. That's a very sad event and probably preventable if someone was wearing life jackets when they're boating. Our condolences go out to the family and friends of that person. We also had a pretty significant accident just outside the jetty in Montauk where a 45-foot yacht ran over a fishing boat and sunk it. That boat is slated to be recovered shortly. It's in about 60 feet of water. There's no concern at this point about fuel spill from it. And the contractor who will be salvaging the boat is working out the necessary paperwork with the insurance company to be able to salvage that vessel. At this point, the plan, I think, is going to be to raise the vessel and tow it into the harbor to a location where it can be dismantled. The other option, depending on how stable it is once it's raised, would be to bring it ashore just west of the jetty and into the Gosman's parking lot at that location with some heavy equipment. If that option is exercised, there will be some minor restoration to that beach area as a result. But I just want to make the board aware. And again, when you're out boating, you should be aware of the rules of the road. There are rules of the road, even though there's no road. You should take a boater safety course, especially if you're operating a large vessel. And if you're operating in limited visibility conditions, you should operate at a very slow speed. This particular boat was doing something like 25 knots in low visibility and ran over. Fortunately, the fishermen were rescued and no one was seriously hurt. But again, everybody just please be careful whether you're driving on the roadways or out boating. We'll all have a safe and enjoyable summer to the greatest extent we can. I had a discussion back in February with Mayor Lawler, Rick Lawler in the village, and Barbara Borsak. Deputy Mayor Barbara had proposed a traffic task force. We know that every summer traffic has become a greater concern to our area. And, one of the problems is that our roads really aren't designed for the number of people that we have. And with certain apps that people, whether it's Google Maps or Waze, that people are being routed alternative routes in primarily through residential neighborhoods that never experienced that kind of traffic before. As soon as the highways and the major roads become clogged, people are then taking these back roads through quieter residential neighborhoods. And it's really, I think, diminishing the experience here for everyone, the quality of life with the throngs of traffic, well over capacity. So there was discussion about how to approach the basic problem. And, obviously one way would be to reduce the number of vehicle trips. So there's discussion of breaking up into 3 different subcommittees. We had participants. We had the mayor of Sag Harbor, Kathleen Mulcahy was involved, and she'll have an additional staff member from Sag Harbor on the committee as well. We had Becky Molinari, the village administrator, again, Rick and Barb Borsak, Billy Hajak, Drew Bennett, who's engineer, works with the village, and others, myself, Joanne Powell from Director of Planning. And so public transportation is one of the areas of discussion. Also infrastructure improvements, and as the board knows, we've talked with the community about some improvements we could make through the hamlet planning. Some intersections have been identified for improvements. So there are infrastructure improvements that could be made to help reduce traffic and facilitate safer conditions. And then the third, which I suggested, was alternative means of transportation, which would include safe pathways for both pedestrians and bicycles, and looking at that as an option. We're fortunate enough to live in a very beautiful area, and if there were safe ways to move between hamlets and along roadways, many more people, I think, would take advantage of bicycles and walking to get from one point to another. It's good for your health, and also alleviates a lot of the demand on parking spaces. So that will be ongoing. We'll be breaking up into those three subcommittees to discuss ways to deal with traffic, and we'll be reconvening in early September with some of our preliminary work. And that's pretty much it. Do we have any other callers on the phone, Mike? Just by chance?
No, you do not.
At this point, we have some resolutions. Kathy, you have resolutions to offer?
I do. It's resolution 2020-726. It's approval of Austin Surf LLC surf lessons special event permit at Ditch Plains Beach by the Dirt Lot in Montauk through Thursday, October 1st. And we reviewed the application, and we're approving the surf lessons, but we're denying a permit for a kids surf camp with up to 15 people due to the severe coastal erosion. The proposed location at Ditch Plains Beach by Dirt Lot is currently much narrower than previous years, and all New York State beaches are ordered to operate at reduced capacity. And as I had said earlier, the town reserves continuing oversight of the operations of the surf lessons and reserves the right to suspend or revoke the permit for failure to maintain compliance with the permit conditions.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. And I had mentioned that Austin would have a black wristband. Corey's Wave has a red and white wristband. 727 is to authorize agreement with Tyler Technologies, Inc., and this is to provide annual training to various town personnel and maintenance for the 2021 period. And the financial impact is $6,063.75 that gets allocated between the A and B fund.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Pass and carried.
Resolution 2020-728 is to declare lead agency for the property rezoning on Panago Place. We had an earlier discussion at the work session. Its proposed project is an unlisted action pursuant to New York State Environmental Quality Review Act. And the town desires to perform a coordinated review of the application with the involved agencies. And resolve that notice of this lead agency declaration shall be forwarded to all involved agencies in the manner required pursuant to SECRA and Chapter 128 of the Town Code.
Second.
Second. We have a roll call vote, please.
Roll call vote, please, Carol.
Councilwoman Burke Gonzalez.
Aye.
Councilman Lease.
Aye.
Councilwoman Overby.
Aye.
Councilman Bragman.
Abstain.
Supervisor Van Scoyac.
Aye. Passed and carried.
Resolution 2020-729 is a salary increase for part-time custodian employee. The town regraded the custodian one position, grade 15, and now the new hourly rate is $22 an hour, effective retroactive to June 7th, 2020.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passed and carried.
Resolution 2020-730 relates to canine scent testing, and it calls for an increased purchase order of $240. This is in addition to the original $1,000 that the board authorized from the Natural Resources Department budget. This is for sewage testing that dogs are helping us with.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Pass and carry.
Resolution 2020-731 is a budget modification, moving $900, $499.74, and $100, and 26 cents from one part of the budget, the natural resources budget, to a different part of the budget for travel, conferences, and other equipment, publicity, and overtime.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Pass and carry. We have resolution 732. And that is notice public hearing to amend UR map URP 16 in EH-17. And this will be scheduled for a hearing on August 20th at 11 a.m. or soon thereafter, as the matter may be heard.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, passed and carried. 733 is to revise resolution number 2020-376 to retain Dan Rezzo, Whiteman, and Osterman, and Hannah LLP, Council 2020, and this is to raise the amount to not to exceed $40,000. And that's in the matter of 3 Mile Harbor Protection and Access Committee and Mark Mendelman versus the town of East Hampton.
Sorry, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, passed and carried. 734 is to amend the budget for ordinance enforcement overtime, and that's moving $25,000 from part-time salaries to $25,000 in overtime.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, passed and carried. 735 is a correction of resolution 2020-647, and this is to renew agreement with Questica. And whereas there's an error in the amount paid in the amount of 3 cents, the town wishes to correct this error. And I just want to make it known that we're counting every penny here.
First time I've ever seen that, so wow.
I have a second, please.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, passed and carried. And that concludes our resolutions. I'll enter any other matter to bring before the board.
No.
I'll entertain a motion to go into exec session for litigation, contracts, and CPF at 2:30.
What time is it now? It's 2:02. Okay, I make a motion to go into exec session for CPF litigation and contracts at 2:30.
Second.
Favor? Aye. Passed. Carried. Thanks everyone for joining us today. And please be safe out there. Please respect your neighbors, wear a mask, and have fun. Take care.